Okay, good morning, everyone. I will call this meeting to order. And this morning, we have on our agenda, Development Services.
That's right, Mayor.
Is that correct?
Yeah, we have development services. We're going to move them up first. We also have the hut tax related industry here. So we'll hear about the hut tax. We'll also hear from our CVB Director, Brett Otting. The American Bank Center, Matt Blasey, has made a special trip in town from Jacksonville, Florida, to present on the American Bank Center. And then we'll wrap up with any adjustments from community input, as well as a few other items to address some of the council questions, to include the cost estimates for dog parks.
Okay, but it's Development Services and then hot tax.
Yes.
And those two are the main.
Yeah, those are the two main ones. Then we have wrap up. This is the final budget work session with the council, unless you want another one after today. But this council's worked hard, I think, but I know in the past 3 years, this council has put in more questions and time than the prior two. Mm-hmm. So we've had additional work sessions on Tuesdays that weren't planned, but we scheduled those to get through the questions and give the council the information they needed.
Okay.
So, yes, we're here with Al. This is the second
Mayor,
time he's been
I
here.
need to call the roll real quick.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry, Peter.
All right.
Sorry, Sarah. Would you please call the roll?
Mayor Paulette Guajardo,
Present.
Council members Roland Barrera,
Here.
Gil Hernandez,
Here.
Michael Hunter, Michael Hunter,
Here.
Billy Lerma,
Here.
John Martinez is absent, Ben Molina,
Present.
Mike Pusley, Greg Smith, City Manager Peter Zanoni,
Present.
City Attorney Miles Ridley.
Here.
Mayor and council, a quorum of the council and the required chartered officers are present to conduct the meeting.
Great, thank you. You may.
Peter, could you go over just real briefly what the process will be starting next week with our budget approval?
Yes, sir. So today we're going to begin to talk to the council at the end of this work session on the wrap-up, what things are changing between the proposed budget and the adopted budget. Next Tuesday on the agenda already is the first reading. The budget is an ordinance, so it's a two-reading ordinance. So there'll be a first read and a public hearing. It's a scheduled public hearing on the budget. It's also it's on the operating budget, the capital budget. We put them on as separate items at the request of Councilman Hernandez. Then the tax rate is another thing that the council will hear next week as first read. The creation of a stormwater utility is an action item also that the council has to consider. And then after that, we're going to move into all the fee adjustments. So the first one would be the stormwater fee. And then numerous departments have fee adjustments. They're individually captioned on the agenda. And so things like the health department has a small fee adjustment. Development services is another example. The airport. So all those fee action items are individually captioned on the agenda for next week as a first read. And then the September 7th, the following Tuesday, that'll be the second read and the adoption of the operating budget, capital budget, the city's property tax rate, the creation of the utility, the stormwater utility, and then all the fees that are included in the budget.
So I still have a few questions about the stormwater, the new stormwater plan.
Okay.
So should I, and I'm happy to go meet with them independently, but is there going to be an opportunity to do that?
Yes. Yeah, you can ask those questions today if time allows. You can ask them next Tuesday. We can do a one-on-one briefing with you, and you can
Well,
still
I
ask
didn't bring
them.
my notes with me.
Okay, no worries. And next Tuesday is a fine time, but we can meet with you ahead of that Tuesday event.
Yeah,
And
I'd prefer to do that. If we
Let's
can.
do that. We'll have staff meet with you either tomorrow, Monday, and then we can still talk about it on Tuesday if you want to have it on the record.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mayor.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so is it Mr. Raymond? Yes. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Council. This is a follow-up from our September 19th budget workshop meeting. This body had concerns about the lack of community engagement. DSD has since engaged, and the presentation that we're going to present focuses on the adjustments made from our engagement with the development community. This slide just shows where we were on September 19th. We are about 40%. I mentioned to this body that we're 40% behind. Our fees are about 40% behind, and we proposed in the first year 20% adjustment, the second year another 20% adjustment. We then, obviously with your comments, we met with the Coastal Bend Home Builders Association virtually after this meeting, and we scheduled a series of meetings thereafter for the following week, which is this week, right? We met with them on Monday. There was a lot of engagement. We went almost line by line over all of the fees. I will say this. It's almost 2 years for me here in Corpus Christi, and we've worked to create a better relationship with development services in all of our constituency, but especially that group, because that's a very vocal group, right? And I would like to think that we both have mutual respect for one another. We respect what they do, and I like to think that they respect what we do. We have a job to do, and our job basically is to facilitate what they do. So we had serious, open, honest conversation, and through collaboration, cooperation, and communication, we continue to meet, continue to discuss. We listen to their concerns. We had our last meeting on Wednesday, which is yesterday, which was a very interesting meeting. Always interesting, not that we always agree, but I think we respect one another, and we've come to a point where we've adjusted our fees, that it's an approach that benefits them. It still benefits us, the city. We still get what we need ultimately. And so today we're going to show you, instead of getting to 40% over 2 years, we're getting to 40% over 4 years, which is 10% over the next 4 years, which gets development services really on the path where we need to be. And I think we can still provide support to that constituency, but to the community as well.
And Al, can I just repeat that, because that's really the cornerstone of your whole presentation. So on that slide that Al had up, initially there would be a 20% fee increase on many, if not most of the fees. Year 1, year 2, you can see in the left bubble, the white one, 20% in year 2, and then construction cost index there forward. And then go to the far right, that other circle that's not colored in, you can see there's a 4-year now, instead of a 2-year adjustment, 10% over 4 years, which gets them to the same result.
Exactly.
It just takes 2 years longer than the other one. But that's the concession basically that they've made working with the development community. Now we'll go over the detail.
Right. And I presented this to you the other day. As you see on the left-hand side, that's kind of where we were and how long the fees have laid dormant. On the right-hand side is exactly what Peter just discussed. 2020, 21, 22, 10% increase, 22, 23, 10% increase, 23, 24, 10% increase, 24, 25, 10% increase, and it gets us where we need to be. It still allows me to do the things that I think we need to do, or have our department do the things that I think they need to do, and still function and provide the services we are required to provide. This just goes over some of the main changes that, I'll say changes or adjustments, right? We initially, for plan review, because, and I'll say this, as I said to you before, most of the adjustments are on the residential side of our table, because those fees have not been touched a while, other than, say, the land development fees. And so the plan review fees of residential, we proposed in the former budget, proposed budget, 12 cents per square foot. Here, in the updated one, it's 11 cents per square foot. Building permit fee for residential, basically 38 cents per square foot is what we initially recommended. And with the adjustments, we were at 35 cents, basically, a square foot. As I said to you before, electrical, mechanical, and plumbing trade permits were not charged in the old way we did things, and so we are charging now. So initially when we came here, we proposed 6 cents a square foot, minimum $120, and now we're saying 5 cents basically a square foot, $110. So we did make adjustments. We did have concessions. It still allows us to function at a high level, which I think we need to, and we can still move the organization forward. On our zoning fees, the same thing you'll see here. What we initially came in and recommended, and you see the adjustments we made on the right-hand side. Again, working with the group, communicating, coordinating, collaborating, working collectively together, we've achieved what I think an approach that works for us well and works for the development community as well also. And here are some of the new fees that we are proposing, right? These are fees that, and as that group says, hey, they've come out of thin air, right? And so we work with them, and the key ones was the early assistance meeting. We've adjusted those from $100 to $75 an hour. The temporary CFOs for residential, there's not a lot of temporary CFOs for residential, but instead of $250, we said $100 per temporary CFO every 30 days is a great adjustment. And the utility availability letter, $702 to $250, all working collectively together to achieve the same goal. This I have this slide in here because this was kind of talked about a lot, especially Councilman Barrera. Here's some of since 2019, right? Some of the large projects, a lot of taxing entities, all with the exception of Salvation Army. So we've adjusted this. We're proposing to adjust this budget item to only include nonprofits. Everyone else will have to pay, the full rate.
So Al, just can you repeat that? So a school district,
School
community
districts,
college,
our community college,
the port of Corpus Christi.
Everyone, taxing entities should pay because it's still effort to do that, right? But a great point was made about nonprofits, and we support that. We want to, continue to support that. So venues like the Salvation Army or any other nonprofit, we would allow the 50%, and that's what we're proposing in this budget.
But the taxing entities are 100%?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
Yes, Mr. Pusley.
Okay, so I thought we had a discussion about the fact we were going to eliminate the fact that school districts didn't get charged they weren't getting charged anything. Is that what?
No, they were getting charged the 50% of the building permit fee, and that's what this chart, shows you.
Okay,
So
so you're going to stay with that, or
No, they'll have to pay now the full building permit cost. So if it's $500,000 for Mary Carroll High School, it'll be $500,000.
Okay, all right.
But Councilman Pusley, so the taxing entities like a school district, a community college, the port of Corpus Christi, the recommendation is move them from that 50% charge to 100%. And then for nonprofits though, like the Salvation Army or any other nonprofit, keep it at the 50% charge.
Correct.
Okay, well, yeah, just on this chart you have, to me, it's almost like those columns are backwards, but that's okay, just as long as I understand what you're doing. So you're saying like Mary Carroll High School, the declared valuation was $88 million. The building permit would have been $500,000. You would have charged them $255,000, but you're now going to charge them the $500,000.
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay, it's just a little bit for me backwards. And I want to go back and ask you real quick, Mr. Raymond, which one of the fees is it the land development fees that we had not been charging, or that the city had not been charging anything in the past?
No, it is the,
one was it? I couldn't remember.
one second. It's the public improvements, which is on this slide. It's the lower half of the sheet where it says public improvement plan review. We have done that for free, actually.
Okay. So those are all new fees?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And then these are just the scenarios that we showed you before. We just included some of the other cities, just to get an idea of what we fee and what other cities fee for the same product type. And we're just now adjusting these over a 4-year period, right? So today, for a 1,600 square foot home, we charge about $668. Year one, that'll increase to a little over 1,000. Year two, a little over 1,100. Year three, a little over 1,200. And year four, a little over 1,400. Same thing for the same kind of increase on the other side for larger homes.
Okay, Councilman Lerma?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Raymond, I'm a little, you're saying that you're not going to charge nonprofit organizations the fees, right?
Yes, that's our proposal.
That's your proposal, right? No,
No, 50, we'll leave them at 50%.
50%, okay.
Right.
Right.
Okay, how did a school become a profitable business?
It's not, but it's not that I'm saying they're profitable. They're a taxing entity. So in other words, their money doesn't come from donations or gifts. They're a taxing entity. They can tax to raise fees, right? And that's kind of what school systems do. So
I think their hands are more tied than anybody else's hands. The state doesn't really allow them to tax as much as they would wish to tax. You know,
Mayor,
schools
can I respond to his statement? Because I was the one that asked for this. I mean, if I may, it's up to you. I don't want to interrupt you.
Finish your sentence, and then absolutely, you can come in and comment.
Well, I mean, I'm just curious because, I mean, schools, they're not profitable. Every dime is brought in through taxing, like you say. But when you have appraisal districts that misrepresent the taxing entities, when they appraise businesses and things of that sort in a school district, and I'll take, for example, Tolosa Midway, has to pay back over $1 million in taxes that certain refineries refuse to pay. Where is that just justified? I mean, some of these school districts depend on the appraisal district to do their jobs correctly. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen every year. They wind up having to pay back some of this money to these big industries. You know, that right there hurts their pockets. They're not made out of money.
Understood.
You're right, you know, as far as that. But I just don't see how we can, I personally don't see how we can tax a school district 100%. I mean, to me, at 50%, I was okay with it. But at 100%, I just can't. I can't support that. That's just my personal opinion.
Councilman Barrera.
Yeah, and I get where you're coming from. The scenario is that the taxpayer is the one that's footing the bill. It's a pass-through cost. It's a pass-through cost because the cost has to get paid. My challenge, as I've told to my policymakers that serve on school boards, is that it was not our decision to engage in their bond program. And therefore, under our current system, they just because they want to have, they have this capital investment, then we are required, because of our outdated policy, to be able to cover part of their cost. So, and that doesn't provide budgetable dollars for us. They're still going to get the money from their taxpayer. However, I don't think that it's our responsibility to be able to fund a component of their project. That's my view, and that's one reason I've been asking for this for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But when school districts have investments as far as new improvements, as far as new buildings, growth, that's where the city's getting their tax money because of the growth of the schools around the schools. All these housing developments, you didn't have schools, you wouldn't have housing. I mean, that's how I tie it, and that's how I'm looking at it. But like I said, that's just my personal look at it. Because if a school didn't build a new campus in another location, subdivisions, developments wouldn't be coming in and building homes there to where you know, yeah, the school taxes, but also the city taxes. We both benefit from it. I mean, that's just how I look at that. I mean, without the schools, there is no city of Corpus Christi.
Okay. Councilman Smith.
Thank you. First thing, what are we doing with public entities and other entities in general, as I'm looking at this slide 7, as far as, do we adjust the fees as the construction goes up?
No.
Because I'm looking at Port of Corpus Christi, $23 million. They sat before us a few months ago and said that building's up to $43 million. Now, they said some of it is fixtures and equipment. So how do we handle that, Al?
Well, we use the valuation that's given at the time of permit, right? So if furniture, fixtures, and equipment are added that blow the valuation up, those are really not permittable things, right? So we keep the value that's given at the time of the permit.
Yeah, but we don't have any way of looking at their bookkeeping, so they're sliding walls into...
No.
Okay.
But when we challenge these numbers, you see where it says declare valuation, if we have a question about that, we'll either ask for a signed contract or we challenge it based on our ICC history, basically.
Okay, and then let's go to the next slide 8. So here's a concern, and like I said last time, we've had a surplus. We had a surplus last year. We've got a bigger surplus this year on there, and the fee increase you're proposing for year 1, you know, it's okay. I think getting the service levels we need, but let's go into the center, that 1,610 square feet with it, and we're proposing by the end of our fee increase to be the highest on the list there. So the question that I'm asking is, how are we going to spend this money? You know, we're making we've got a surplus right now. You reported to us in the workshop that you're hitting the service requirements 90% of the time on the various deals. We've got a large fee increase, so how are you going to spend that money? Just because San Antonio charges this, you know, we are cost of service.
Excellent question. So let me answer the latter first. You mentioned by the end of our fee increase, we'll be at 1417 and we'll be the highest on their list. Keep in mind, the fees you see here from the other cities are for today. So I'm assuming that they'll adjust fees accordingly as most cities do. The second thing I want to address is the first question you asked is about surplus. The excess revenue that you pointed to, and you specifically pointed out at $829,000 and some change, right? And I was a little bit flushed because like, oh, wow, really? Surplus? My gosh, whatever. So I went back and looked at the numbers over the last 3 years, 1819, 1920, and 2021, which is the current year we're in, right? So for the last 2 years, which are on record, right, my revenues were $5.4 million. My expenditures and I'm talking about 1819, my revenues were $5.4 million. My expenditures were $5 million, which means I had an excess revenue of $400,000. I transferred $407,000 of that to general fund and other things, and I put $2,700 in my $27,000 in my fund balance. The next year, which is the one that produced that $829,000 excess revenue, my revenues were 5.9, my expenditures were 5.1. So that left this $829,000. However, I had a 16% vacancy rate. Most of that is like 70% of that is salary savings. I transferred $614,000 to general fund and maintenance, and I put $249,000 in the fund balance. So and right now I'm running a negative, right? So it's not like we have flush money, right? So for example, if you approve this budget and allow me to remodel the building and do the things that we have in our enhancements, I'll have a little over $1 million in my fund balance, right? I still have to hire 7 people, and I have to retain those 7 people. Hopefully, and we can produce a place where they would want to stay and grow and be the professionals that they are. So it's not that you're wrong, but I'm not sitting on cash that for example, you say I don't have to raise our fees, right? 2 months ago or 3 months ago, you guys passed a new you passed something for Peter Collins, which was the new N4. That new N4, the processing for that new N4, my computers, my CPUs can't handle that processing. So I've got to get new computers for most of my staff in development services, plus the ones that need read-only access, so that we can operate it efficiently, so that when I reach out to the world or to my development community, we're kind of on the same page. So I've got a lot of upgrades to do in-house. And I'm not quite sure when, quote unquote, we'll have, we'll be stockpiling money. However, I did promise the development community that as we go through this 10%, 10%, 10% each year I'd come back to them like we do at our development services task force meetings and review where I am, what do I have in surplus, and do I really need this 10% increase going forward? And if so, we'll make the appropriate adjustments. But we need this money so that we can develop and become the high-performing organization I think that the development community needs.
Well, and I agree with everything you're saying on there, that you need more people. It's in the budget without the fee increase. That's internal, and I agree that we need to increase our turnaround time on there. We've managed to have surpluses to build a fund. You're doing the needed renovations out of your fund balances, right, to
Yes, sir.
surpluses. So it's just good business to maintain some. What I'm not seeing is that kind of detail. Okay, we're going to get another $1.2 million. How are we going to spend it? We're going to spend $500,000 above and beyond what we're, not only the vacancies that we already have the funds for, that we haven't spent on there. Let's go ahead, spend it, get those people in there. We need them. So, but as we take this next step up on it, what are we spending it on? All we're hearing is increase. We're not, and you're saying some broad bucket stuff, but we're in budget. Eddie needs to know, how exactly where is it going? Are we hiring new inspectors? You mentioned, do we need to upgrade our computer system? What are the specifics to justify us going from kind of a median cost through the state to the upper tier? So that's my question. I'm very glad to hear that we're going to be working. We're not just saying, okay, we're going to do 10% because we can. We're going to work with the community. That's the only thing that will make me say, okay, that we're committed to the community on there. We're going to be watching, like any good enterprise ought to do, what our expenses are, the actual justifications, not what the market can bear, but what we really need to have a good department that does the turnaround time, the response that we need on there, the modern, the M4 and the equipment necessary to do it. But it's not a flat percentage. It's specific dollars.
Understood.
It's good. We run good budgeting on there. So
As any good business was, and we'll report on that.
Your cost of service, and
Right.
I think you've been doing a little bit too good a job. I really don't like to see the surplus there when, we can improve our service. On
Understand.
there. But I don't want to build in an excess fee schedule just because we can. So, okay, thanks.
Understood.
And I've spent long.
Okay, I think, Councilman Presley, do you have a question? Okay.
So Al, in your description of where your excess funds are going, you mentioned that you're transferring money back to the general fund.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So talk to me about where does that money just go to the general fund and we spend it on whatever we want to, or?
I'm sure it does. Eddie,
We'll get Eddie to comment on what he
right,
does with
yeah,
it.
because we just transferred. I'm not quite sure what they do.
I can't hear you.
Administrative service charges, building maintenance charges, copy print shop, fleet repair costs, MIS allocation, and self-insurance. So again, a lot of it just covers our overhead
Okay.
with the city.
And I'm okay with that, but, so if he has, and I'm gonna use round numbers to make it simple, if he has $1 million left over, and he transfers, he thinks he needs to save in his fund balance half of that, and he sends half of it back over to the general fund, do you have specific line item amounts that that's going to be applied to? Or does
Councilman,
it just come over in a round number?
there's no transfer to the general fund except for to pay for indirect charges like city attorney, budget, finance,
Okay, well,
payroll.
that's my question.
Yeah.
Before he sends that over, you're sending him a bill.
Right. He doesn't just send over any, if there's leftover money, he doesn't send it to the general fund.
Okay.
This is it's a special revenue fund, but think of it as an enterprise.
Right.
All the fees for services, the fees that he collects stays in his fund.
Okay.
If there's any excess after paying all the bills, to include what we call indirect charges, city general fund charges like payroll, legal services, and so on, those are part of the business. Any excess money stays in his fund. We do not send it to the general fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, and I understand that part, but my question was, when you're charging these administrative fees, he's getting a list of what he has to give back to the general fund, so to speak,
Yes.
to cover his part of what it costs to run his business.
Right. We have a third party that does this indirect cost plan.
Okay?
And it's based on the prior year's actuals. And so it's based on hours of use. So we see how much time does he use from Miles's group, how much payroll services, and they calculate a rate or a charge for the next year. It's done every year.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what most cities do that.
When can we have a specific discussion on that topic?
On the indirect cost plan, whenever you'd like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's done, right, Eddie?
It's done.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, I think we need to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that's all the questions, Mr. Raymond.
And really, sorry, just a few more slides. We made adjustments throughout all of our presentation, land development, and the final land development slides. So if there are no more questions, thank you. Oh,
Mr. Hernandez.
Al, on the, your enhancements to the building, were you able to create the CIP page for that?
yes, we did.
Yeah, that'll be part of the budget amendment
we
that
did.
Eddie will show you later
Okay.
in the budget work session. Yes, sir.
Okay, and just for reference, I asked this question here to the city manager since you're a special revenue fund, you're not required to maintain a fund balance, right?
Or a percentage,
A
anyway.
percentage, yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. As you know, the fund balances are required for internal service funds as well as our general fund, but not, and our enterprise funds, just not the special revenue funds.
That's correct.
And that's per our policy. Thanks.
Great. Mayor, we want to thank Al's team that's with him here this morning as well.
Yes.
And we also know that Wendy Herman's here. And if, at your pleasure, Mayor, she would want to make a few comments.
Absolutely, Wendy. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Wendy Herman, the Executive Officer of the Coastal Bend Home Builders Association. Well, as you guys know, last Thursday, the home building industry got a little blindsided when we learned during a workshop just like this one that development services, engineering, and public works plan to potentially add thousands to the cost of new homes by raising fees 40% and adding 36 new fees. We had no clue about these increases until I was watching this online. And I immediately started making phone calls. I called department heads, assistant city managers. I called most of you guys just so that we'd be allowed to have an opportunity to review these fee increases and allowed some input, or at least an explanation of what they were going to do with all this money that they got. And thankfully, to everyone involved, thankfully, we were allowed to have some input on that, and I really appreciate that. This past week, I think we've had 4,000 meetings. I feel like I've worn Yvette's phone out. In fact, Al, you don't pay her enough for all the stupid questions she had to answer for me. And so I hope some of this money goes to her. But we had a lot of meetings with them, and what we wanted to know is how they came up with these fees and what they plan to do with them, and what was our return on investment on these fees. Al Raymond and his staff have gone above and beyond to assist in helping us figure this part out. They repeatedly went line by line through their budget. They trimmed all of the fat. They worked all weekend. They explained all of the hows, all of the whys, and they actually negotiated many of these fees to make it a little bit more equitable, a little bit more palatable for us. I'm probably never going to come before you and welcome a fee increase. I'm probably never going to be excited about that. But because the development services looked at us as a customer, and they took the time to educate us, and they took the time to negotiate with us and listen to our concerns, my association has no problem with the fees as they stand now. Especially, as Al said to you, Councilman Smith, that next year we're going to review and see if he really needs that next 10%. So I'm excited about that. I'm still struggling to understand exactly what engineering and public works, the fees that development services collects from them. I'm a little struggling to understand exactly how they came up with their numbers and what exactly they're doing with that money, but I'm hoping for the same transparency and willingness to talk about that that I have enjoyed with development services. And finally, I want to let you know that I am working on a calculation. I'm looking at all the departments. I haven't even gotten to utilities and parks yet, but I want to see exactly what the increase is going to be to a house on October 31st. I think as representatives, you're going to want to know that because the public's going to come at you about that. So I want to make sure that you guys understand exactly what all this does. With development services, I feel like we're getting some bang for our buck. And thank you, Al. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Andrew. He's not even here right now. Thank you to all of you guys for working with us on that.
Okay, thank you, Wendy.
Great, and Wendy, I think you used the word, I'm not sure the word you used, but we'd like to think of you as a partner. I know Al does, and so we're grateful that you let us work with you. And thank you for speaking today. Yes.
Yeah. Wendy, we do appreciate the organization, the association, and you do always, I remember when it was said, and we've come a long way, you know that you do have a seat at the table, one way or the other. You know, regardless of how you heard or how it came about, we always know we're going to have conversations with you. And like I like to say, this council welcoming a new era of progress includes some painful things that in the end, you know, are going to be for the betterment of exactly what you represent. Thank you. We appreciate that. Okay.
Okay, Mayor, thank you. So we're going to move now to the visitor industry, and we want to thank Matt Blasey for coming in from Jacksonville, Florida. He's still somewhat working here on the American Bank Center. He's here with Lisa, the interim director as well, for the agency ASM Global that helps us manage that facility in the convention center. So that presentation begins on page 12. And Matt, thank you for being here. We'll turn it over to you.
Good seeing you again. All right, I gotta go glasses. Good morning, Mayor Guajardo.
Good morning.
Great to see you again, Council.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Great to be back in Corpus. Got here last night, but here we are. We're ready to go. So yes, Matt Blasey, acting general manager, still here for the American Bank Center, and we've got Lisa Amanda here, our assistant general manager and director of finance, available for questions as well if necessary. But just wanted to give our proposed budget update for FY22. To start, our mission statement: as industry leaders in venue management serving the coastal Bend community, we are committed to always doing more and providing extraordinary experiences for our clients, guests, and employees. And when we say do more, that's our mission. It's carried out by practicing what we call our 5 points of pride, which means more engagement, energy, kindness, service, and celebration. Some quick overview on the American Bank Center. In regards to number of events that we typically do, what we're showing here is excluding the last 2 fiscal years that have been impacted by COVID, but we typically do right around 400 events, and we classify an event of anything that is a group, whether it's 20 people or 8,000 people coming to the American Bank Center, that requires a level of coordination. So pre-COVID, we were averaging about 400 events a year, and about 500,000 people coming through the doors for those events annually. And then as part of our ASM Global management agreement and expectations, there's a customer survey, and we typically will do that for our ticketed events going out to our patrons, and then on the convention side with the banquets and the conventions and more of those type of events, we do a client survey. So we don't, because of COVID, there's been very minimal element on the ticketed side for our patrons coming through. So this is a direct reflection of our, what we'll just classify as our convention center business through client experience. So that's based on when the client meets with our sales team, our event coordinators, our event staff, housekeeping, food and beverage, all elements of when we put on basically a non-ticketed banquet or convention. We're getting where our surveys for this fiscal year are a 9.63 out of 10, which I think is absolutely spectacular, and definitely worth noting that we're doing a lot more right now with less staff, and we'll talk about that in a second. But a lot of staff are being required to do more outside of what their normal expectations were when they were hired on, and still receiving very excellent scores. So that we want to recognize our employees for the hard work and excellent service that they provide. So COVID is still impacting us, obviously, impacting everyone. But as relates to the American Bank Center and the industry, we're still, there's been fall off of our conventions. We've done a few, and a few ticketed events inside the Saline Auditorium and the arena, but pretty minimal relative to what we typically do. So with that, we're done with this, but in FY20 and into 21, we actually implemented 4 different levels of staff reductions, particularly layoffs. So prior to COVID hitting, we were at 46 full-time employees, and sometimes we were up to about 50. And we are currently now down to 19 full-time employees. So all 19 of those are back to full-time with, we were even doing furloughs for a while, but with city manager and other support, we were able to say, let's just bring these folks back to full-time because of the events we're having, just from relationships. And we'll talk about some other things we've accomplished over the last year here in a second. But and then a way that we've really focused on is our indirect expense, and how that is defined is basically any expense that has separate than related to hosting an event. So our utilities, our salary and wages, repair, or just general repair and maintenance type things, administrative elements. So we focused on, because we're not generating revenues, what can we do to reduce expense on the operating side? And a big chunk of this is salary and wages by going down to 19 full-time employees. But there's been a reduction in FY21 with a few months to go, obviously, but we're forecasting that we've reduced the indirect expense by $1.5 million when comparing it to the last real full year of operation of FY19. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware that we're focused on the indirect expense while the revenues are minimal. And then as far as kind of moving forward, it's with the recent increases, we're still not, FY22 is not going to be what it was even, FY19. It's gonna take some time to build it back. That being said, we are at a point where we'd like to start bringing some of our positions that have been laid off. So we're looking at up to just, and again, we're going to assess it as events are either happening or not happening. But right now, everything on the books, we're looking to bring back about 20, up to 20 of those full-time positions from when we reduced it before. But if you compare, we'll be around 38 by the year's end to where FY19 right before COVID, we were at about 46. So still about 10 to 15 less than what we are when we're full swing. Our organizational chart, as you see, we've got a couple positions that we're in the process of still filling. One being the general manager position. There is an active search, and so hopefully in the next 4 weeks, next month, we'll have that filled. But as city manager mentioned, I am still involved with all of the booking of the facility. I'm still the main contact from Jacksonville, trying to book the venue as well as a lot of the bigger items, relationships and tenants and key stakeholders. I'm still actively involved with all of that and make sure that it'll be a seamless transition. Lisa Amanda is introduced her earlier. She's our interim general manager and also wears the hat of director of finance and assistant general manager. And then our director level, Daryl Meadows, has been here for at least 10 years, but really the face of the team and a great relationship with all our stakeholders. Mark Bechtold, our director of operations, came from Houston, the NRG Stadium in the last year, and then Lou Aurelio is our director of food and beverage. And then we are actively seeking a director of sales and marketing, which that was one of the positions that, just from a timing standpoint, we weren't actively looking for that during COVID, just because there's not a lot of corporate sales sponsorship and events to market, so we're actively searching for that role right now. FY21 achievements. Probably the thing we're most proud of was trying to take advantage of or find ways to still do events while the indoor business was not happening. So with a great partnership with the Parks and Rec Department, we were able to utilize the water garden space, which we, from an event standpoint, called it Water Garden Park. And we have done probably 5 or 6 concerts, have a couple more in a couple weeks, but been able to do some national touring artists out there and had received extremely positive feedback from the artists, as well as the patrons that have attended. We've also done some community events out there. We're doing some some outdoor movies where we've done 2. The last one, we sold it out. We had 500 people out there, and we think we can do more than that, but just wanted to make sure we weren't crowding it too much with the first time having that many people. But we think we can do at least 1,000 people and expand the space some more. But a lot of positive feedback, and that's something that long term, once we get back to operating at what we consider to be normal, we still want to utilize that space and bring people to the water garden area, and even when it gets fixed, that'll add a pretty amazing element to that space as well. So, and then as far as we weren't doing events, obviously, that we would typically do, but we opened our doors to give back for things related to city needing to utilize the facility. So biggest things were COVID testing, but also the COVID vaccination. We had multiple ways we were doing it, whether a drive-through in the arena or a walk-up at the exhibit hall, or we did the parking lot. So it was very flexible as far as doing that. I think we ended up doing about just over 50,000 vaccinations at the American Bank Center. But also did the voting. Everybody's looking for more space at that time so we were doing early voting, as well as the election day, and just food bank distribution, just a lot of different things that we were able to utilize our parking lots and the American Bank Center space to provide service back to the community. So, and then continuing of capital improvements. Almost done with the locker room renovation. We added, I don't know if you've seen, an outdoor marquee on the convention center exterior wall, which is a nice thing for upcoming events, as well as potential sponsorship opportunity, but mainly traffic flow as far as where the events are. So hopefully, from a customer service experience, provide a positive element. And then, without going into too much detail on this, but we're really proud that going back to bringing our remaining 19 full-time staff back to 100%, even though some of the roles, just because of a minimal event load, really focused on strategic planning, but really focused on our employees. All the time we're so focused on the clients and the patrons and the tenants, which is always critical in running a facility successfully. But we spent the last year focused on the employees and improving work-life balance, communication, professional development, strategic planning type stuff. So we started it last about probably almost a year ago now, and just focused on what we can do to make it a better experience as far as working at the American Bank Center. So it's a grind with nights and weekends, and the pay isn't the best, but what little things can we do to improve communication? And so what we called it is venue excellence, and actually Lisa took was overseeing it, but it was just a lot of feedback, input from our employees, and then seeing through a lot of those things throughout the last year. So very proud of what that is. It's not something that, we can, a lot of visual element to it, but we think by focusing on our employees and improving the culture and communication, that to me, it reflects in that 9.63 score as far as all that goes. So very, very proud of that accomplishment. Some performance indicators that we typically will show annually: capital project management. We ended FY20 just over 7 million improvements. This is both for the arena and the convention center. Majority of it is on the arena side, just from strictly a funding standpoint and available funds. And so for 21 and 22, and we had, I think, and I don't have it in front of me, but I think we had $6 to $7 million in capital dollars this year. A couple elements that just, again, relative to the lack of revenues coming to the American Bank Center, we said, there's some things that we'd like to do, but we can do that over time, and we want to just be a little more cautious with those dollars. So we scaled back our capital execution this fiscal year, still move forward on some high priority elements. And then as far as budgeting for next year, we only, and this is combined convention center and arena, where we've been up in the 5 to 6 to 7 million over the last 3 years. We proposed just over 3 million this year, so not any major renovation, more just upkeep type stuff. So, and not feeling that we are putting the facility at any, by deferring any maintenance. We still think we can maintain the maintenance of the facility, but not any big ticket items that's going to drive the dollars on the capital side. And then conventions, this is something that talked about earlier, but we've just seen a fall off on the convention side. We're typically in 15 to low 20s annually. This year we're estimating that we'll have 6, and then we're budgeting 12, but we still don't know with the larger capacity events are the ones that are holding off on coming back or not. So that's just is a question mark there. Same thing with concerts. You see a fall off there. FY20, we were on pace to have about 8 or 9 concerts, probably closer to possibly even 10. But because it got cut off halfway through, we had some canceled ones and only had 1 in the arena this year, and as well as we're budgeting for 5 next year. And that's a question mark there. So arena concerts, we value all of our events, but where that is critical is that's what drives the revenues to the facility. And so that, to me, is the biggest indicator from a facility revenue is the arena concerts. And then event days, again, consistent theme there. We'll end up doing about the same number of events in 21 as we did in 20, but we don't really have the impact events. We had some major concerts the first half of 20, so from a revenue standpoint or impact of the bottom line, we're doing a lot of smaller scale type stuff where the revenues aren't quite being generated. And again, budgeting 326, where we normally do 400 to 450, but that may, a lot of questions. I repeated myself throughout that. Here's a pie chart of the proposed budget. The inner circle is the expenditures, and then the outer is the revenues. From an operating standpoint, like I talked about the convention center or the capital projects, we have 1.3 in the convention center and 1.9 on the arena side. We've been trying to do right around $1 million a year from the hot fund for capital for the convention side. And on the arena side, we've been more that's what I was talking about, like 4 to 5 million, but we're just doing just under 2 million this year. And then from the expenditures, both on the arena and convention side, there's other elements to that from an operating standpoint. Strictly the operating expenditures, we run from a budget standpoint, we budget for a break even on the arena side. So of that 3.9, the 2 million is in operating expenditures, And then on the convention center side, 4.1 budgeted of that 5.2 on expenditures from an operating standpoint. And then on the outer circle are the revenues generated, and a lot of that is city or like other fundings, the HOT fund and the Type A fund going into that, but we talked about the revenue and expense already. So facility upgrades, typically, in these last couple of years for the presentation, I would talk about the next year's projects, but tying back to my previous comment, we're not doing any big ticket items for the next year. So just want to give an update on projects that we were planning to be a 2-year process. So in FY21, we received funding for locker room and dressing room upgrades, as well as some additional storage space. And so the funds were approved, but it was a 2-year project. And so we are, I need to get an update. I haven't been to the building, but we're pretty much done with phase 1, and phase 2 being the locker rooms for the Ice Rays and Texas A&M Corpus Christi men's basketball. And so those are just getting done right now. We're expecting the project to be done, I would say mid-November is when that'll be completed. And then the storage space, that's always an issue, so we extended on that on the arena side of it, and added a dressing room for artists for a better artist touring experience, created more space for that as well. So that project's going well. It will be coming in under a few $100,000, or I'm sorry, a couple $100,000 under budget, so that's always a good thing. And then our suite lounge, which really a upper level upgrade. There's 2 different elements to that. One is, if you're familiar with the suite level, we've got the glass hallway, the hallway, then the glass dividing it from we call it the city terrace area. That outdoor area is underutilized and prime real estate from a site of the bay. And so what we are doing is expanding that, getting rid of the glass essentially for about 70% of it, not the whole way, but expanding that out, and it's going to be glass enclosed from the roof down to the ground, and adding a premium bar out there. So it'll make all of that area a much better experience for the suite level folks, as well as our premium seat element. And then that corner bar, the club lounge, we are going to upgrade that, but also enclose that, so now that becomes a revenue generator. Right now, it's either the suite people are going to the bar, or people that are sitting in that general area can just use that bar. But we're going to enclose it, update it, and make it a sellable suite to sell on an annual basis. So a revenue generating opportunity, and then so the suite holders will have that new area, that premium experience for them. So some definite upgrade. And then the other element to it is it's actually checking another box from a facility standpoint. The way the building was originally designed, there's a lot of humidity that's coming into the building, and if you see the tile, we have to replace those tile. Anyway, so part of this project is fixing it structurally. So we're going to see some better elements from things that you you probably recognize from not seeing tile with the humidity coming through it. But so that'll help the facility, kind of the guts of it as well. So that concludes my presentation. I open it up to any questions at this time.
Doesn't look like we have any questions, Matt.
All right, perfect.
We do. Hold on, a light just went on. Mr. Busley.
All right, thank you.
Oh, no, we have one.
Oh, you did? Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I
we
didn't
do.
hear
We
you. I
got
didn't hear you.
one.
I'm sorry,
We got
okay.
one.
I'm a little slow on the trigger there.
No,
I
you're fine.
apologize, Matt.
Hey.
Matt, this is my first go around on this, and for years I've been a customer of the American Bank Center, or someone who visits there, and so I just have a few questions and comments. And I'm going to start with, and maybe this is not your issue, and I feel a little funny talking to you about any of this because you're not really our employee anymore. Is that right, Peter?
He was never our employee. So the ASM Global is the management
So
group.
he works for the company that manages it.
Right. Yeah. Right.
But indirectly works for us.
Right.
Right. We have a contractual relationship with
But we
ASM.
do have our interim here
Yeah,
present.
Lisa's there.
Okay, all right. And I'm going to start in the parking lot, and I'm going to give you some observations from somebody who uses the facility. I have always said if you wanted to see how to safely, quickly, and efficiently evacuate a parking lot after a large event, go watch the San Antonio Spurs, Bear County people do
They do
it.
amazing.
I've never seen anybody do it as well, and we do, I think, we basically just open the doors and let people fend for themselves. We have no traffic control, no, you know. I think we can do a much better job of helping people get to and from events at the American Bank Center. And that's just an observation that I've made, and I've heard those same observations from other people.
Right. Well, if I could comment, two things to that. One, I agree. I've been to the AT&T Center. They do an amazing job. I think we do the best with what we have available to us. The parking lots that they have available exceed what the capacity of that arena is. What I've said in my observation during my time here is not just parking, but elements of the facility. It's designed for our capacity, and I'll just focus on the arena for right now. Mm-hmm. It's built for 8,500 to 9,000 people, being up to 10,000 people. Structurally, and the surrounding support for it with traffic, roads, parking, it's designed for about 4,000. So we have challenges there that we're facing, and that doesn't mean we just throw our hands up in the air, but we have worked very hard, especially on the out. We have designed traffic, working in partnership with the police, that we've got a designed effort to have people leave 3 to 4 different ways depending on where they're parked. And so we don't do that for all events from a cost standpoint, but when we have more than probably 4,000 to 5,000 people in the building, we do that. And then part two to that is tying back to the Capitol. I actually had a $3.4 million project to improve the parking. It wouldn't solve it, but it would improve to add more parking, add more access points, hiring a consultant to to come in and assess it all. We're still moving forward with the consulting element of it, but I removed that from the capital for this year just because I think it needs more planning, more partnership. So it's on the schedule for FY23, but the planning is happening now. But again, it's not going to solve the issue, but it will improve it. Better signage. Yeah, I've said all along, parking for that facility is grossly underserved, and we made a lot of adjustments in the last, well, not the last year, but the last year of having the bigger
And I don't
events.
place all of that blame on your organization's shoulders. Part of that has to be on the city of Corpus Christi. If we designed a facility to hold 10,000 people and only provided 4,000 parking spaces, then shame on us.
Yeah.
But, you know, the point is, it's like a very smart guy told me one time, you know, when I was working for him, don't tell me what the problem is, tell me what the solution is. And so I'm just telling all of you here, including the city manager, that we have an issue with that. I'm surprised we haven't had somebody seriously injured leaving one of our events because of it's just like, you know, pandemonium whenever an event's over. And I won't beat that horse anymore, but we really need to look at that in the future. That's if we're going to ever be, if this is ever going to be a place where we attract
Right.
and get good comments from people who come here for those kind of events, we have to do a better job.
Right.
The second thing I want to talk to you about is your food service. I can't imagine how complicated it is to try to feed 500 or 600 people in a banquet hall. But I will tell you, and all places struggle with this. The county's fairgrounds struggles with it. The Ortiz Center struggles with it. But I almost believe in some events I've been to there, the food that's been served, we'd have been better off having Chick-fil-A deliver sandwiches and French fries. We have to figure out a way to to do a better job on food service when we have events like that. It's embarrassing sometimes what they bring out and set on the table. And
I'm sorry, where is this though? What
Pardon?
table? I mean, like,
food.
at the,
Well-
at banquets and stuff. I'm
Yeah.
thinking of
A couple
the-
comments to that. One, I would defer to our customer surveys. We are reviewed very positively. Two, based on our management agreement, we don't have exclusive rights on catering. So there could be a possibility of the events that you're talking about aren't our service. And three, if it was recent, then labor, like everywhere else, and getting food out is, I've been bussing tables over when I was there the last 6 months, because getting people, we bring in 20 temp labor and 2 show up, so execution has been a bit of a challenge, but I would defer back to how our reviews are, and they're very positive on the catering side. We do have a new chef that came in from the Alamo Dome recently, and the response has been, I'll use Buck Days as an example. They came in and said the catering was outstanding, so while they were there. So, again.
Well, I think for small events, y'all probably do a really good job, but I'm talking more along the lines of when we had the mayor's State of the City address, those kind of events. I think there's a challenge there, and so hopefully we can do something about that. But and then I want to just ask a quick question about your suite lounge upgrade here. Are we getting help from an architect or somebody that or designer who's helping us redo this, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was all done with the local architect.
Okay.
Yeah, ASM Global's managing it, the project in total, right? But you have a design consultant and then the contractor.
Project management firm.
So I guess, Peter, I would ask, and I know how the relationship with Global Spectrum, the company that managed the facility for the county, I know a little bit more about that. I don't know all, but how is our interface with Matt's company? Do we get to input anything into that management, or do we just say, here's the contract, y'all go take over?
No, we do. We have constant input. Right now, the contract's overseen by the Parks and Recreation Department. So Neiman has actually been kind of the front person.
Okay.
But in my 2 years, I've met extensively with Matt. I've walked the facility with him. We've looked at and have given him critical feedback on some of the capital projects, as well as some of the service delivery issues, parking, the aesthetics of the outside. And so we're engaged. We need to be more engaged.
Okay.
The arena convention center, or at least the arena, is similar to other things I've seen where we've done something great in the city, but we haven't had the back support. We haven't had the staffing to help support it. And so there was really one person to help oversee the contract for the American Bank Center.
Right.
We need we need somebody really focused on it, and we're doing that today.
And okay, well, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear all that. Matt, how much of an improvement would it be if you had, for the things that you do at that facility, if you had a hotel that was attached to the convention center?
That's a whole nother conversation, and Brett would probably be able to provide a lot of more research as far as the impact it would have. But yeah, I mean, it's something that convention business is very competitive, and not having that is definitely a competitive disadvantage for us. So when we're competing against other markets, not only not to have the proximity of it, but the costs associated with transportation is another element to it. So we're having to invest in dollars to incentivize folks for the transportation side. And so best way to sum it, we're at a competitive disadvantage, strictly from a convention center or convention business standpoint, that markets our size, markets that have convention center square footage similar to ours, have connecting hotels and or very close proximity to it, and so it definitely puts us at a competitive disadvantage.
If we already have a challenge with parking and traffic if you added that to the facility, that issue's only going to get worse, I would assume.
Yeah, parking needs to be a discussion, a big picture discussion in regards to any development around the building, but definitely with the hotel.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
the job you've done in the past, and we appreciate everything you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter, on that note, and I don't know, I would imagine your team or your meetings with leadership can figure this out, but there are many things that you, today, in this instance, you can't fix. You can only, as you just explained. But I think there are things we need to know, and the people up here change. We change, everybody, you're here, and then you're gone, and what have you, right?
Right.
But we need to know, for example, what are the challenges with American Bank Center? And then what is it going to take to get past that challenge? And then we make that decision, because you're basically saying, bring on the money, and let's go make some parking lot. I mean, you can't, there's a miracle, and then there's,
Right.
give me something to work with. We've got to have the tools. And I've seen this over and over with many different things. Today, it's the parking that Councilman Pusley just brought up, which is very valid. And I'm sure it's frustrating on your end, because you just said, and I saw it when we did the food bank, the food bank drive. But I think it's just important to note that when we come to budget season, we know, hey, council, I want to remind y'all, this is an issue in this department, and we can fix it, but it's going to take this.
Right.
And who wants to make that a priority? That's the decision up here, right?
Right.
And then there are numerous other maybe departments and issues that you can't fix unless this body says, we want to invest in that to fix it. But we need to know what those are holistically.
Right.
And I'm sure as time moves on, you're able to fix some of those internally. And then some things you need to bring here and say, you guys have complaints about this. This is going to be on the schedule to consider.
Right.
And I know you do that, but something like this is not going away. If anything, if we're going to grow the city the way we want to, that is going to become even a bigger problem.
Right.
So.
Yeah,
just
you're right,
know.
Mayor. And as I told the council when I presented the budget on the 27th of July, the American Bank Center and Convention Center will be a focal point of mine and the teams for this beginning in October, after we get past the budget. There's a lot of analysis that needs to be done on the business operations, a lot of policy proposals we need to develop for the council. And there's a lot of options we have.
Right.
So now that we've stabilized some of the other core businesses like our streets,
Right.
Public safety, we can now devote some time to this important asset in our community.
Great. I think we have a question or comment from Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. In terms of the capital improvement,
Yes.
For the most part, it was pretty straightforward, with exception of the last one, which is major building upgrades, which was very kind of catch-all, not specific, which makes it hard to kind of justify the spending. I guess for future projects like that, be more specific in terms of what it is. And I'm not just railing on you on this one. I've done it to other departments as well. Parks had one for pools. It was just kind of a catch-all, and it's important maybe be more specific so we can actually know what that money's being spent on.
And that's actually a great point, and that's something that I was trying to balance out, because we took over capital when I first got here, as far as all elements of it. And so what we were finding is we were, in the first year, we tried to line item it out as best we could to have that full, and we always want to be transparent. But what we're finding is a couple projects where there was going to be surplus on one. Not that I think for most part, we've come in on budget for everything, but there was a lot of back and forth of going back and repurposing funds, just from an efficiency standpoint, one, and two, determining projects just from a timing standpoint of when budget is done to what we think may be critical now versus what happened 6 months ago. So we intentionally broadened the scope and did less line item projects.
You can do that. You just have to delineate or enumerate what's in those
Yep.
project lists. There's none of that in there.
And that's what I was going to say is what we need to do. The next step is, because we've gone that route, just highlight, identify what we're going to be looking to be
Right,
doing.
and we have that problem in the city as
Yep.
well, where we have some budgets that go over, some budgets that goes under, and we're actually going to be dealing with that here shortly. The other question I have for you is, and I always wondered about this, was that kind of empty space that is open air right between the Selena Auditorium and the I guess.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Right, that hall where it's just
Yes.
kind of, open air.
Yes.
And has there ever been consideration to reclaim that space into breakout rooms, which I understand is an issue for you guys?
So my thought was, goes back to the design of the facility. When we have events over 1,500 in the Selena Auditorium, it's an issue as far as concessions and just points of access, merchandise, all that stuff. So what my initial proposal wasn't for breakout rooms, and then also for conventions, we're always setting up kiosk type stuff. But what I was proposing was extending the footprint of the lobby area, cutting the outdoor area down by a third, and then creating like a market right there. So when we have a convention, there's a grab and go kind of deal, as well as for events in the Selena. It's now where we can sell concessions as well as merchandise. It just expands. Right now there's a makeshift fenced in or kind of area right there. Expanding that to be part of that footprint and then just make it multi-purpose. I held off on that one for a couple of reasons. One, the hot fund support on the convention center side isn't as, we don't have the dollars available like on the arena side with the type A fund. So been a little more selective there. Plus, to Mayor's point, there's been this talk of potentially doing a larger scale renovation of it on the convention center side. So I didn't want to start doing things that maybe went against what the big picture improvement of the convention center was. So for those two reasons, we haven't done it, but yes, we can definitely utilize, that space is not utilized, very similar to what we're talking about on the suite level. That space isn't utilized very much, and it could be utilized for either a point of entry or expanding the footprint of the lobby area.
Okay. The other side of it, you had mentioned convention center hotel, right? And I know this has kind of gone back and forth, and I don't want to get in the hotel business, right? But I'm not opposed to doing a ground lease. I always thought instead of fixing the water gardens, we could do a ground lease there and put a hotel there, or say, hey, we'll lease it out, whatever term lease, and have somebody come and build it. And then have an access there, but then you have a parking issue. But I thought it was an ideal location because you have great views of the Lexington, of the bridge, of the marina, and you can walk to it. I don't think being on the other side where the arena side is makes any sense because it should be on the convention center side. But that might be something we can look at as a means to an end, right? Instead of us getting in the hotel business or constructing something, it could be a ground lease. And if that's the case, we replace the water gardens, we can ensure that the contract includes a water feature for the hotel. That way that there's something a part of that. But it's something to think about in terms of financing projects creatively as to where, we can both benefit from the process. Anyway, thank you.
I think that's all the questions, Matt. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor, we're going to call up Brett Otting, our CVD director, for the next series of presentation material.
Okay.
I did want to point out at the American Bank Center, though, and the Convention Center, it's in year 4, Councilman Hernandez, of the capital budget. But we've asked Matt to look at a new roof. It's been, I don't know, we're not really sure of the story, but the roof hasn't been replaced on that whole facility. The ABC, it's never, since construction, but the convention side, we're not sure if it's ever been replaced, and the convention center is much older. So in year 4, we have a $10 million project in the CIP, and just put it on the radar because that's a big ticket item. but we're pretty certain that a new roof in the near-term future is going to be needed for that facility. So I just want to point that out because it's a big ticket.
Thank you.
Okay, Brett, thank you for being here today. We'll
Thanks.
turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Since before I get started, since we're talking about convention hotel, I do have some numbers. In the hotel and conference world, there's a such thing as a denial tracker. So as the sales teams at American Bank or Visit Corpus Christi or even the Omni are working with convention groups to try to bring them in, at some point, if they say no, the question is always what made you say no to Corpus Christi? And prior to me, all three of those organizations did a very good job of keeping track of those reasons, whether it was the date didn't work or the lack of a connected hotel. So what we have done is we have taken all of that data going back to 2001, and I can send this spreadsheet to all of you. But if we want to look at going all the way back to 2004, we have lost 655,999 hotel rooms, totaling 750,000 attendees for an economic impact of $170 million. If you go to 2018, so the last 3 years, American Bank Center, Omni, the Downtown Holiday Inn, and Visit Corpus Christi have tried to bring groups here, and within the final 3, we were turned away because of a lack of a hotel. Those rooms totaled 109,990 rooms for an economic impact of $33,989,000. That should give a pretty good summary of the impact that a hotel could have. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started here. Next slide. Am I changing slides? Okay. Okay, so we are an accredited, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. We're accredited 501c6 destination organization. We have a new 5-year contract as of about 3 months ago with the city. There are 17 voting board members on the Visit Corpus Christi board. There's another 7 ex officio non-voting board members. And we receive 44% of the city's 7% through that contract. We also have a 501c3 foundation that is called Visit CC Cares. That money is raised to help the at-risk hospitality community when they're going through issues. It started with COVID relief, and it is continuing on because it's been very successful. So anybody that works in the hospitality business, whether they are a worker or an owner, they can reach out to us and apply for funds, and we can give them funds to kind of help them through a tough time, whether it's with a sick kid, a fire at their business, whatever it may be. And then we also, right now, we have currently 18 full-time staff. We have 1 open staff position, and our budget next year is going to be roughly $5.6 million. I have 3 slides here to explain kind of how the last summer went and how this helped shape what the total budget number is. This here is comparing to 2021. We very quickly realized back in March that we weren't going to compare this year to 2020 because we were more trending towards 2019 numbers, which was the previous all-time high. The yellow line is 2019, the orange line is 2021. On the left, you'll see that each month we have gotten closer and closer to the same occupancy rate as 2019. The beauty in that, though, is the middle graph. You see how orange is very high above, and that is the average rate of hotels. So visitors are paying a lot more money this year than they were even in 2019. The good about that is that is not from gouging by no means by the hotels. That is the hotels finally selling rates for the right time and the right price in Corpus Christi, very comparable to what other cities around the state are doing as well. And then on the right is revenue per available room, which in the hotel industry is one of the best indications of hotel performance from a financial standpoint. You see that that's trending up as well. So this year, overall, the hotels have been having a pretty successful year. This next one here is a 3-month rolling average showing the increases in hotel occupancy tax and the increases in citywide sales tax revenues. The point here is to show that the increase in the influx of visitors into Corpus Christi during the summer has had an increase, direct impact for citywide revenue for sales tax as well. And then if you look at any different type of data point, this is a little harder to read, but it's smaller, but this is the same thing. No matter what type of data point, whether it's the number of visitors, the number of spending, the number of hotel overnight stays, you see that there's a direct correlation with the increases in sales tax revenues. On the bottom right of each one of those, you see the two outliers are the holidays, which is when the locals are really out there spending a lot of money for Christmas and the holidays. So those are outliers. But aside from those 2 months, there is a direct correlation with how tourism goes, so does the economy in Corpus Christi. This here goes all the way back to 2002, showing that. This is an even better indication to see how there's a lot of similarities between visitor increases and sales tax increases. Okay, so achievements. Looks like there's a issue there on the formatting. So we just received here on July 14th our international accreditation. I believe we sent a release out to all of you. It was discussed in the media as well. Visit Corpus Christi is now one of 200 organizations in the world that have achieved the industry accreditation. And what that means is that all standards and procedures that we do are of top industry best standard and above. So that's something that hopefully you're all really proud of, to know that what we are doing here is following all top procedures and best practices in our industry. Achievements, going back to last year. I'm very pleased to say that the achievements from last year was really a copy and paste of what our goals were that I presented you last year. So we have a new mission and vision statement. We did the destination brand launch and the community pride campaign at the Corpus Christi Hooks game. Many of you attended that. We have a 3-year strategic plan. We have a new brand and a visitor profile study, so we've spent a lot of time and research on knowing where our visitors are coming from, what kind of individuals they are, so we can make sure that we're very strategic with our marketing. We have an annual business plan, and we will be finalizing that business plan for next year in the next 2 weeks. Our Coast Like a Texan campaign was very successful, and I will show you how successful that was in just a moment. We moved our visitor center to Water Street Market, as you all know, and the Gulf Coasters program, which is the golf carts out on the beach, has been very successful. So successful, in fact, that Peter has asked here in the next month that I come to a council meeting and present some survey data and how successful that project has been over the summertime. So the Coast Like a Texan campaign, this was the first marketing campaign that I've been a part of at Visit Corpus Christi. It started in April, and it's just wrapped up when we got to August. So the point of this slide here is that we outperformed the industry average by 2 times better when it comes to the number of people seeing our ads and actually interacting with us on these ads. And so much, in fact, and I'm going to slow down here because this is something to really focus in on. During the summertime, people around Texas and the United States that saw one of our ads online and clicked on that ad spent $5 million in Corpus Christi over the summer. They saw our ad, they clicked it, and then they booked a hotel room or a plane ticket on Expedia, totaling 24,000 room nights and 1,631 flights. Those are 100% verifiable through Expedia. So our advertisements are making a difference, and this is a great indication. This is just the first one we've done, and there were some kinks that we're still working out. So we will be doing another campaign in the fall and the winter, targeting winter travel, and then we will also be doing another one obviously next summer as well. But these ads, the way we're doing these ads, are working. They're working to fill hotel rooms, and they're working to fill airplanes as well. So we're very pleased with those numbers. Hopefully you are as well. 47.5%. The number of people that saw our ads were 47.5% more likely to come to Corpus Christi. That is through credit card spending data and GPS data. It's even higher if you look at out-of-state data. Those individuals that are not from Texas that saw our ads were 211% more likely. Again, those are individuals that looked at those digital ads, and then through their credit card spending and GPS, they showed up in Corpus Christi at some point during the summer as well. So here's our budget for next year, $5,570,000. This is the 44% of the 7% hotel sales tax for the city. You see that the majority of that, the overwhelming majority of that, is going into marketing because we're seeing such good success out of that. Experience is the Experience is the Gulf Coaster program. That's the visitor center. That's what we would call more of the internal Corpus Christi marketing when it comes to how we interact with the visitors once they get here. I've said many times that our goal is to get them off the beach. We feel that the beach is the driver to get them here, but we want to get them off the beach as fast as we can and get them into the attractions, get them in the restaurants, get them spending money. So the majority of how we're spending our money is going into marketing. Sales at 9%. Administrative costs are very low compared to nonprofit industry averages and the industry average of tourism organizations as well at 21%.
Brett, we have a question, Mr. Smith.
Yes.
We'll wait till the end. Okay.
Okay. So next year, I hope to be coming here and saying the same thing I just did, that the goals and strategies of last year were all completed. And so here's what our goals and strategies are for this year, and these are reflected in our budget and our business plan. And you'll all receive a copy of the business plan on October 1st when it is published. We are moving our office. The new office will be done and we will move in on October 1st. It's the Bayview Tower right off of 37th and Chaparral over by Burger King, kind of across the street from Burger King. They're ahead of schedule right now, so we'll be moving in there at that time. The Corpus Christi Tourism Academy also have towards the bottom the focus on workforce development. It's kind of the same, understanding the hospitality industry issues when it comes to hiring and training. We have a new program coming out called the Corpus Christi Tourism Academy, and we have already been working with CCISD, Del Mar, and the university here on creating a ecosystem that makes young kids want to work and feel proud to work in the hospitality industry, and making sure that they have opportunities for certifications and education going all the way up from 2-year school to 4-year school as well. Targeted marketing campaigns. This first campaign was Coast Like a Texan, as we already talked about. That was slightly more of a generalized campaign to reintroduce Corpus Christi to the country and to Texas. Next year's campaign will have a slight tweak where it will be Coast Your Own Way. And at that time is when we will really start using that data that we have to very strategically target the right people at the right time. So you'll see very different ads no matter what part of the state or country that you go in, because we feel like we have a good understanding from that data who our visitors are. October 28th is when our new website will launch, and that website has a lot of good opportunities for the hospitality industry to get more involved with us on their own accord as well, and promote themselves through our website as well. Group sales strategy and branding. We have a campaign starting in the fall to target group business, convention business. Mexico marketing. We do feel that from our research that there is an opportunity to market in Mexico, so we're working right now on the beginning stages to do some marketing in Mexico. We will hit the Rio Grande Valley and Monterrey during that. Very excited to talk about beach safety. We've been working with Neiman and Parks and Rec, as well as the Giussani Foundation. If you've seen the Giussani Foundation videos and the beach ops flag system, we're working with them. We're going to help refresh that brand and create some new videos and a whole new campaign targeting beach safety, and we're working really well together with Parks and Rec on that and the Giussani Foundation to make sure that everybody that's coming to our beaches understands the dangers that can be out there. The Gulf Coasters program, again, those are the golf carts. We've been very successful. We're going to expand those to North Beach next year. We want to make sure there's so many visitors going over there, not just to the beach, but also to the aquarium in the Lexington and the restaurants over there. We want to make sure that we're hitting all the individuals over there as well. So we're going to get to a point. The Gulf Coaster program was a 2-year process where they have special uniforms that's kind of a coral fishing shirt with khaki shorts. We also, starting next week, we'll have the Gulf Coasters out at the airport greeting passengers when they're arriving as well. So by next summer, we'll be to a point where we will have hopefully psychologically trained the visitors in town to find those shirts and know that we're there, whether it's on the beach, on North Beach, downtown, or at the airport. We're here to help and answer questions and direct them around. Airport experience development. Yesterday, Kevin and Tyler talked about some projects that they're working on at the airport. We're working with them as well to make sure that the visitors have the best experience possible. And we're going to be putting some money into that as well from that standpoint. And then air service campaign. As you all know, there's a lot of irons in the fire when it comes to air service development in Corpus Christi. And part of those discussions is us telling those airlines that we're committed to putting money and advertising into those markets if they were to give us routes to certain cities. So we have money set aside for that. And then the last two, the Corpus Christi Sports Commission, Corpus Christi Film and Music Office, those are year 2 strategies of our 3-year strategic plan. Those are very far underway. We're getting close to hiring a head person for the Sports Commission. We've already started working on creating a sports facilities guide so we can utilize that to market to groups that are thinking about tournaments. And then from a film and music standpoint, we are working with some city staff, and then we're also going to be bringing in the local film community to talk about the ordinance, and I believe we'll be presenting in October to the council at that time as well. Our website, visit corpuschristi.com. If you go to /about, you can see all of this. You can see the strategic plan, our Destination Next assessment that I've talked about a lot in the last year, our annual business plan, our 2021 annual meeting it's called the Hospies event. Our annual meeting recording is on there. And then the 2021 Portrait of the American Traveler, which is the most comprehensive tourism visitor study that's done in the country, and it just happens to be done by the advertising agency that we work with, MMGY Global. That is on there as well. So if you're ever interested in knowing who travels, where do they travel, you can see that as well. And I will stand for any questions. 24,000 employees during a good year. Obviously, that number is not the same right now, but we do have a huge impact on travel and on the success of the community. $11.88 for every $1 that the city gives Visit Corpus Christi. This is verified by the governor's economic impact on travel. For every $1 the city gives Visit Corpus Christi, we bring in $11.88 in sales tax revenues to the city. Thank you.
Okay, great. Councilman Smith.
Thank you, Brett. Great presentation. So, current revenue, we were told at our last budget meeting that we hit a record for our collections, and I guess that was for rooms in June. How are we sitting for July?
So that number for June was $1,980,000, I believe, and that was an all-time monthly record. And if you look, that was the hotel tax collections for June. July blew through that number from a hotel standpoint.
Which hadn't been reported to us.
Which has not
this
been reported
body.
yet. That will be reported on September 10th is when that number will come in. And I would guess that number will be over $2 million. So that will become the all-time high one month. If you want to talk the success of hotels specifically, I looked at the hotel report before I came up here to make sure I have my numbers correct. There were $28 million in hotel revenues in the month of July.
Okay.
Last year, there were $13 million. That was during COVID, so I went back and looked at 2019 as well. It was $24 million.
Yeah.
So the hotels brought in $4 million this year in July than they did in 2019.
Yeah. Convention Center Hotel. So are people knocking down your doors? You said the RevPAR performance, I mean, we've got some excellent, that main indicator for hoteliers. We're seeing how necessary it is. Are people interested in the convention center hotel?
People as in
As hoteliers? Are they?
our hoteliers?
Yeah.
I think it's a mixed bag, to be honest with you. I think that there are some hoteliers in town that probably would not like a convention hotel.
Well, are outsiders coming in? If it's economically viable, I think they'd be talking to us, are they?
Are there outsiders? Yes.
Okay.
There are. And I've had a couple conversations. I've actually talked to the mayor just last week about an individual, Councilman Hernandez, what your recommendation was. There's companies out there that do that. There's companies out there that specialize in building hotels on government, city-owned leased land as well. There's another company that has reached out to me as well that would like to find some time to talk to me as well, just to so we know who they are. The one that I told the mayor about is they're a national company. I knew about them from my time in Kansas City, actually, because they built the Overland Park Convention Center Hotel. They have also built the Westin Hotel. If you've been in Irving, Texas, the Westin Hotel that's connected to the Irving Convention Center, they built that. They're building a Hyatt Regency in Conroe, Texas, right now, and they're also building a convention hotel in Amarillo, Texas, as well.
Are they subsidized on those?
They are through bonding. They will. They look for bonding to subsidize over a 30-year bond, and they will also go out and try to get incentives from the state and the federal government as well.
And do they repay the bond, or does the municipality repay the bond?
The municipality pays it over the 30 years, and once it's paid off, the ownership goes back to the city.
Okay,
as well.
So they're looking at the taxpayers for the financing. It's a lease.
It's a lease in a lot of ways, yeah.
Okie dokie. Jumping over the airport, so you're doing much more marketing out of state, and this is just a comment. We're getting some of our best load factors that we've ever had as an airport, 91% on there. And you mentioned that you talked to one of the major airlines, and they really didn't realize we had a beach?
Yeah, I think that this is, yeah, that is true. This is a good example of how hard Kevin and Tyler at the airport have been working. Yeah. Last November, Kevin, Tyler, and I went to Denver to an airport conference, and the vice president of route planning for an airline asked us why we were being so bold at saying Corpus Christi is a destination that they should look at. And during that conversation, he brought up that he did not know that we had beaches here. Fast forward 9 months, they have asked us for more information. They've actually reached out to Kevin and Tyler asking us for more information. So we have continued those conversations with that airline, as well as many others. Kevin and Tyler are constantly talking to those airlines, giving them data. Kevin and Tyler and I are constantly talking about what data is right at the right time, depending on what destination they're looking at, what airline, and they're continuing to feed that data. And so in a less than a year, it's went from us trying to introduce Corpus Christi to these airlines calling us. So it's a good testament of you all hired the right two people there at the airport.
Well, I think it's also a testament that we haven't adequately marketed our area. In the past, we'd have a major airline that was not aware of this. And what is Corpus Christi? The gateway to more accessible beach than any other city in the nation. And we've got a major airline because we focused on other things in the past.
Agree.
And so thank you for what you're doing there. One of the up and coming things are sports. What is our potential for sports? What should we be doing there?
Sports has surpassed even convention sales in the last 5 years, or convention economic impact in the last 5 years. As you know, conventions were hurt during COVID. Sports flourished because they're predominantly outdoors. It is a multi-billion-dollar market. We need better facilities here. We have some good facilities, but overall as a region, we need better facilities and we need more facilities.
What are you planning to do this year? What are you budgeting for? So we've got a bigger than a convention market on there. So what is the CVB or Visit Corpus Christi doing to tap that market?
So we are hiring a head of sports sales, and that individual will be attending key trade shows and conferences as well, conferences that are very prominent to try to bring these groups in. We're going to start working. We're going to develop a sports committee where it's people that are in the sports industry here in Corpus Christi to make sure that we're partnering with them and we know that we have access to their facilities as well. But then we also need to take a look at what we're missing out on as well from a sports facility standpoint.
So we're just starting to get on the sports bandwagon.
Yes, yes. And that was, again, that is the creation of the sports commission. It was a year 2 strategy in our strategic plan, and October 1st starts that up. So I feel like we're on task. We're behind when it comes to the sports market because Corpus Christi has not really done a good job of marketing to sports. And when I say sports, I don't mean just baseball, softball. I mean, aside from a couple places that have good fishing, and all the great work that the Downtown Marina and the Yacht Club do for the J22s and all that, there hasn't been an organized effort really from anybody to try to bring large groups of individuals in to Corpus Christi to stay and compete.
And then we haven't done, I think, as a city to provide those kind of facilities either. With it. We've got Portland across the bay, they dropped $12 million into a first-class complex, and we're seeing the sales tax and hot tax go over there. Peter, I really liked your comments earlier about we're going to be taking a look at things, and for years we've chased this convention dream. What have we seen? We've got record hot tax. You just said that coming in there, and conventions are in the toilet. So that hot tax is not coming from conventions, and the more we try. Of our hot tax dollars, we've got budgeted next year $6,983,000, and as Gil would say, this is Fund 1030 on there. I forgot the pennies on it. With it, we're going to be plugging in another $7,879,000 in the arena fund. So we, as a city, are investing $14 million in these facilities. It's in a declining market. We're seeing sports. We've laid behind on sports, so I really look forward, $15 million a year, we could be building a sports facility every year for it. We're seeing the hot tax revenue is not convention center. Like I say, we just had Matt say the conventions have died, yet we're doing record hot tax. Why? Because now we're starting to emphasize the other areas of our city. And Brett, thank you very much for what you're doing. Going out of state, I think we're really on the cusp of things, and I hope we look back and invest our money wisely. Yeah. $14 million in convention center that really doesn't bring that much to us. And hey, if somebody wants to invest in a convention center hotel, that's fine. If they want to do it, and their state, we're qualified. Todd Hunter got us on that list. They can get their portion of the state tax for 10 years if they're within 1,000 feet on public stuff. But our bread and butter, our tourism, isn't that convention center.
Agree, and that's just another reason why we should be really excited about the leisure success that we're having. If you look at October through February last year, the hot collections were actually down at 5 months through versus budget because COVID was still lingering on. So this huge increase was really from spring break on that we've surpassed everything. And again, that's with, I think we've had 2 conventions. There's been a couple concerts and events, but very, very little convention business, which it to me is all the more reason to take a look and say we either need to do something and do it right, or we just need to completely stop even working on things like that because there's an opportunity there. Every tourism consultant, researcher, economist, magazine that specializes in sports and conventions will say that the trend is that the cities like Corpus Christi that are a destination for vacations as well are the ones that are primed to be successful in the future when it comes to sports tourism and convention tourism, because you can promote that cost as a dual trip, where you can come for business, come for your sporting event, but you can also stay for 2 or 3 extra days and get your vacation in at the same time. And all up and down the Florida coast, for instance, there's a lot of effort being put in there because they believe that as well.
Yeah, and I talk about the beaches, but also the aquarium and the lake, so that those sports visitors, they're very likely to go to those attractions, and really
Agreed.
class attractions, and our museums. We've upped the budget for that, so it's
Agreed.
all
And we
holistic.
feel that our servicing team is primed to be able to have those discussions. And we have the Texas Society of Association Executives coming here in 4 weeks. And that is a very important conference to Corpus Christi. And our services team is working with them to go on little tours of the aquarium, the Lexington, all over. Every one of our attractions, we have tours set up for them, but we're really trying to make this not just a conference, but also a vacation for them as well. And we feel that we're able to do that when it comes to whether it's a sporting event or a group event, that we can make sure that we work with them to have enough time where they can spend money in the market as well, and they're not just sitting in a convention room or on a ball field the whole day.
Well, Brett, thank you very much for all the work your team is doing. You're a very important part of our economy, and I think we as policymakers, we need to take a long, hard look when staff comes up to us that, in how we're spending our money, where we're focusing our efforts with it, trying to take advantage of what we have here as a community, and very much unique. We are an outdoors community. We have the beaches, we have those kind of things, and we offer things that many other, like you said, we are a destination. We need to start acting like that. Thanks again, Brett.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilman Pusley.
Hey, Mayor, yeah, Brett, good report, and I agree a lot with what Councilman Smith is saying, especially with respect to the sports. It's amazing the number of people who follow sporting events, especially youth sporting events. I've always wondered why we don't have something like the Little League World Series, things of that nature come here. And when I was commissioner, and you're going to find this hilarious, but it proved true, the Little Miss Kickball program that operated at one of our county parks came to me and said, if you will build us one more field. They had 3, but they needed 4 to be able to host a regional tournament for Little Miss Kickball. They said, I promise you will see. So we built the field for them, and almost 4,000 people came to that tournament. I mean, it's amazing, and that's, just a small part of it. I wanted to focus just a second on, the city is spending a fair amount of money improving our marina. And so talk to us a little bit about what marketing things you're going to do or ideas that you might have to help take advantage of the $20 million that we're going to spend at the marina. I know some of that is for dredging and boat slips and that sort of thing, but there used to be a number of water sporting events that took place here, and for some reason those drifted away. And so talk to us a little bit about where we may get on that.
Great question. Excuse me. That's a great example of why I believe the Sports Commission is so important, because the Sports Commission would not be just focusing on land sports, they'd be focused on water sports as well. I've had many good meetings with Jonathan at the marina, as has some of my staff as we've started to get down into the details. We are, with our new website, we're going to be working with Jonathan to develop a page on our website for the marina. Now, when it comes to some of the details and the rules and paying for your slip, it'll be redirected to the marina page. But as far as why would somebody want to come to the Corpus Christi Marina, what are the luxuries that they have there, we're going to create that page for him. We're also looking at data and research of where those individuals come from. Believe it or not, you can actually look at the data just like you can a GPS in a car. You can do it the same with a boat. So we're working on avenues to try to figure out how to capitalize on that. There's a lot of individuals through the years, and with my understanding from Jonathan and others, that the marina used to be a lot more full than it is now. And just through attrition, they have left and went to Port Aransas or went to other slips for better service, a little more up to date, whatever it may be. So we're going to work very hard with Jonathan to try to market to get all those boats back and to get more here as well. When it comes to events, the Yacht Club has done an amazing job of bringing these large scale events here, but they're also paying out of their own pocket oftentimes. And so Eddie's going to show some slides here in a few minutes, and one of the slides I believe will talk about some incentive funds that we are going to be setting aside. I've talked with Peter about this. We have a fund that can be used to bring groups here for the American Bank Center. It's called the CEF, Conference Events Fund. That fund is restricted only to events that take place at the American Bank Center grounds. So an event like another sailing tournament, a ball tournament, anything that doesn't take place there, there's not really incentives for that. So we've created a fund that we're going to be able to help the Yacht Club, and so people like Alex Harris aren't paying out of his own pocket to try to bring these events here. And our sports commission will not only help with some funding, but will also help go attract those events and find those events, and then we'll also help put those events on. So it's again not just the Yacht Club group, who is a great group of individuals working really hard, but they need some help with some of this stuff as well. They're bringing in a lot of economic impact to the city, and so we should be helping them and assisting them a little more than we have in the past.
What about the speedboat people that used to come here? They used to have events here. Do you know what happened to that, or why they quit coming here?
That is very ironic that you asked that, because this morning I received an email. I've had two conference calls with speedboat racing, and Jonathan has been on one of those calls as well. We reached out to them after I found out that years ago they used to be here. Right. And we reached out to them, and they're very interested. And so we are having another call next week to talk about the prospects of what is the financial commitment, what would that look like, what is it from an operational standpoint, and then what time of year would be best. But they are committed to coming back here, and myself and Jonathan are committed to working with them to try to bring them back here as well. So
that was a big deal when it was here. I mean, they brought a lot of people, and
yeah,
it was
they've taken some new forms through the years, which is actually in our favor. There used to be a lot of different organizations, and the main organization has kind of taken over some of the smaller ones. So this is a lot bigger, and there's a really huge opportunity for us.
Good, excellent. Okay, great report. Good luck, and thanks for all the great stuff y'all are doing.
Thank you.
Really encouraging.
Councilman Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor. When you talk sports, I would also include swimming.
Absolutely.
I know we're a baseball town.
We're in a baseball town.
But there are, we
Yes,
do
sir.
have USA Swimming here. As part of the region, they do championship meets, 2 in the winter and 2 in the summer. The 2 in the winter are called short course, and the summertime they're long course, which is yards and meters. Anytime one of those teams hosts a meet, you have anywhere from 700 to 1,000 kids, depending on which championship it is. And then when you have that many kids, it's all their families that come down from San Antonio and Austin, and even up from the valley. So I would venture to say the Games of Texas, which I see you have budgeted for here in your budget, you have $250,000 from hot tax to be spent on that, right?
That is Parks and Rec. That is not Visit Corpus Christi.
I'm looking at the
It gets transferred, it's the HUD funds will pay for it, Parks and Rec will spend
but
it.
what I'm looking at is a hot fund tax, right? So
Yeah.
you primarily control the hot fund tax, right?
No, he doesn't.
No.
Yeah, the city
Well,
does.
It pays for your.
Yeah, the city has a contract that guarantees CVB 44%.
How much goes to them?
44% of the HUD tax.
44%. So,
You're right.
I mean, well, looking at this from a budget standpoint, I'm looking at the hot tax case,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So $250,000 from hot tax is going to go to that. So that's where that money came from that was budgeted in parks last time, right? Okay. All right. So that I was just verifying that. But going back to sports, that needs to be included in there. If we can work with some of the teams to host those events and provide some assistance as well, then it makes it more palatable for them to come and host those events.
Agree. We've been to the facility to take a look at it. In my prior life, we had an amazing natatorium where we partnered with Kansas University, and we did a lot of swimming events there. And as you know, individuals oftentimes that put their children through swimming have a little bit of a higher income level as well. They spend more money oftentimes as well. So swimming, comparable to other sports, oftentimes brings in a little more economic impact.
Yeah, you
from
ever
a
try to
national
buy one of
average.
those tech suits?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
$300
Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
swimsuit.
So yes, I did not mean to leave swimming out, but I was, in the interest of time, didn't want to name off every sport. But we will be looking at anything and everything from kickball to in a prior life. I also put on the World Horseshoe Tournament. That was indeed world. There were people from Europe and Asia that were coming for 10 days for horseshoes. You can make money doing anything.
They put cornhole on ESPN.
Cornhole's on ESPN. That we will be looking at cornhole as well.
Well, in terms of doing that, obviously you have to have the facilities.
Yep.
We're fortunate. We do have an auditorium. It's not the largest one, but it would work for what we needed to do.
Yeah.
If I would venture to say, and I don't know, maybe Neiman can speak to this, the Games of Texas, how much of the swimming component was all of the Games of Texas in terms of how participation? So 1,300 swimmers.
Yeah, swimming was one of the bigger venues, correct?
That's great.
Yeah.
I rest my case.
I
Swimming.
hear you, Councilman.
I
got
advocated
numbers.
for other reasons.
I've got numbers. Just kidding.
But
I support swimming wholeheartedly.
The first thing we're doing when it comes to sports is we're looking at all the facilities that we have and what kind of sports can take place in there. And we're going to be developing a sports facilities guide. From there, what we really need to do is we need to do an assessment on what we're missing. And what we're missing also depends on what other cities in the region have and don't have as well, to see what that competitive advantage is. We may all think that we need a 20-field baseball diamond, but it may not be as impactful as a indoor volleyball facility, for instance. We need to look at that from a holistic standpoint around the whole region to see what would be successful or not.
Right. I'm sorry, I was pointing at Dr. Gonzalez. If I may, and this is precisely the conversation we had yesterday. We toured all of the baseball parks, and it was a wonderful experience because myself, Neiman, I always want to say Marcus now, Young, and Dr. Gonzalez, and a few others, Lisa, Oliver, we Kevin, a couple more, we were, you're enlightened. And at the end of the day, you see, and that was my question, which is basically what you're saying. We need to look at what do we serve and who do we serve best and how. And so we really need a master, and I'm only talking baseball because it's actually been like on my, you guys remember, I mean, from the onset of coming on council is the baseball fields and the conditions of them. What is the real need? Let's get a master plan, which is basically what you're saying. Let's get a master plan for what we have, what we need, and what do we need to do to maximize, right? What we can do. It's baseball town, it's swimming town, it's a soccer town. So how do we balance all of that within our park system? Yes, sir.
Right, that's correct. And, along with the Games of Texas, I'd like to point out, in July is when we had the Games of Texas, and we also happened to see this increase. So it's important to note that these venues are important for our community and for us to bring us here.
Yes.
And having things like better baseball fields, better swimming pools, where we can host tournaments and bring more people into town, it's gonna give us that boost and bringing people into our community.
Absolutely. Councilman Barrera.
Thank you, Mayor. And, along those lines, I've talked with, let's see, a parks director, an interim parks director, and Dr. Young, and now another interim parks director. We're going to meet tomorrow. But I think that there's events that we know of that we should be working together with the Convention and Visitors Bureau, particularly when something as simple as requesting a permit. When we had that huge soccer tournament on McGee Beach, you know, it's not something that we worked in conjunction to capitalize on or to provide resources for that demographic to ensure that there were food trucks out there and whatever the case is. You know, we've had two, and you know, I know, Brett, you and I have talked about the university, about utilizing that as a resource. I don't think we market the events that the university does quite enough. I know they've had a regional volleyball tournament on McGee Beach, and there's collegiate competition volleyball nets out there, and they have to be, we need to know in advance. And I think we had a little glitch where we didn't have it for the Games of Texas. So we just need to have a better coordination so that way we could capitalize on that. I know Gail over at the university, the volleyball coach, the sand volleyball coach, she's very optimistic that we could assist them in providing more regional volleyball tournaments there on McGee Beach. And she said, I'm entirely optimistic that we could get ESPN out here and have this awesome drone footage of our beautiful bayfront and marina, and showing there the awesome seawall of, all these individuals coming from all over the country to play beach volleyball. So I think that's something that we need to work in conjunction to make sure those facilities are, number one, top notch. And I don't think it's going to take a lot of investment. I think it's just taking care of the assets that we have. And I know my colleague down at the other end that's one thing that he pushes all the time, just maintaining the assets that we have. We're putting all this money into, how much money are we spending on the Cole Park Pier?
What's that? It's about 9-10 million for the construction, and we put another 150,000 in the budget for maintenance.
So here you are, same thing, just that corridor with which we have at the bayfront. And, I'm blessed that my office is, 1 block over. And so, I have a beautiful view of the marina. And the fact that we have all these events that we're not capitalizing. So I would ask that maybe on the Sports Commission you have somebody from the Parks Department that participates, because that's something that I think we can facilitate. We just haven't been able to capitalize on it. I mean, 2 years ago we had, I guess it was 2 years ago, one of our basketball players was actually in the slam dunk competition for the NCAA for the final during the NCAA tournament. And those are things that they're already here. They're already here, and there's people already coming, and we're not utilizing that opportunity to put our best foot forward. So. We'll talk more tomorrow, and like I said, I hope that we incorporate somebody from the parks, or at least the parks director, in that sports commission.
Absolutely, and just to make sure everybody, we're on the same page. We're always looking for more efficient ways of doing things. Now technology is much better at doing things. We can mass market things. We can send out information. And that's one of the things that we're doing now. We're informing all the vendors that are there of any events that are happening. So that information is starting to go out. And we do realize that there are other ways of doing it better, and we're looking for those ways.
But integrate with the
absolutely,
Visitors Bureau,
and conversate as well.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
I would say I agree with everything you're saying. From the commission standpoint, the head of Parks and Rec and the head of the Marina will both be on that committee. And then I've spent a lot of time with the athletic department and the athletic director talking about ways we can capitalize on the beach volleyball success, basketball as well, and how can we bring more tournaments, whether it's volleyball or basketball or other sports as well. How can we help them bring those conference tournaments and even regional and NCAA tournaments here as well. That'll be a keystone for the Sports Commission.
Okay, wonderful. Brett, thank you. Thank you. I know this is year one, well, you've been here a year and...
Year and 5 months.
5 weeks, okay.
5 months.
5
1 year,
months.
5 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we really look forward to, the year was, you were locked away at home working.
That I
But we
was.
look forward to everything that's coming.
Okay.
Because we know, as many other things, you're part of the new era of progress.
Appreciate it.
And your leadership is extremely, extremely important. And we certainly appreciate it. Thank you. Look forward to
Thank
working
you.
together.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brett. Mayor and Council, Eddie, our budget director, is going to talk a little bit more on the hut tax to show some of the other programmatic areas that we're investing the hut tax dollars in. It begins on slide 39.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Eddie Houlihan with the Office of Management and Budget. Just a couple of slides here on the hot. The local hotel occupancy tax must be collected from all guests who rent a room or space in a hotel costing $2 or more each day. And then the state hotel occupancy tax, which is 6%, of which we get 2%. We're one of just a handful of coastal communities that get that. Must be collected from all guests who rent a room or space costing $15 or more per day. It applies not only to hotels, but also to beds and breakfasts in condominiums, apartments, and houses. And then the hotel occupancy tax rate is 15%, 7% is a municipal tax rate, 6% is a state tax rate, of which we get 2%, and then the convention center rate is 2%. Then a little note that in October of 19, the council authorized a collection agreement with Airbnb and HomeAway and other entities to provide for the reporting, collection, and remittance of hotel occupancy tax to the city for short-term rentals. Regarding that, we have collected over the first 10 months of this year a little over $1.5 million from those two, Airbnb and HomeAway. So there are definitely short-term rentals going on out there. This is just a chart showing the 15% and how it's split up for the convention, American Bank Center, 2%, 7%, the state of Texas 6%, and the Visit Corpus Christi or the CVB gets 44% of the 7% we collect per their agreement. This is a revenue history on the 7%. The first two bars there are actual amounts from 2019 and 2020. So in 2019, we received $11,878,000 in hot revenue. In 2020, that dropped to $10.5 million. That's the big COVID, happened in March. And then in FY21, we adopted a budget of a little over $12 million. The estimate, which was done in June, $12,244,000. So as I stand here today, we expect to far exceed that unless something really strange happens here in the next month and a half. And then for 2022, we budgeted $12,752,000. Very conservative number. A couple of the new hot expenditures that are budgeted in 22 is of which Brett will have quite a bit to do with this, is a citywide wayfinding program for $500,000. And then we also budgeted $100,000 for seawall experience development.
And can I add on that wayfinding? That's basically signage, right, to help tourists and visitors get around. But the goal is to have consistency or have a theme, it may not be the exact look across the city, but consistency in how we do this. So we know we need signs for downtown, but the island, North Beach, even Flower Bluff and Cal Island and so on. So it's a multiple person team. Brett's a lead person on there. Alyssa from the DMD is on, our Public Works Director and other city staff. So it's a real good initiative that we're able to fund. Finally, we've talked about it for the past 2 years. Now we're able to recommend it to go forward with the budget. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the other expenditures in the hot fund that we have are Gulf Beach maintenance of $1,950,000. This has increased over the years, but that's Gulf Beach operations, lifeguards, maintenance of the beach, cleaning of the beach. The next item is the Museum of Science and History for $550,000. Now this was a 5-year contract that started in fiscal year 19. It runs fiscal year 19 through fiscal year 23, and it was the management fee was a declining rate. It started at $500,000 in fiscal year 19. It dropped to $300 the next year, then to $200, and it is scheduled for $150,000 in 2022. But through conversations with the city manager and conversations with that entity, we budgeted $500,000 for the management fee because certainly partly because of the pandemic, they just can't function on the 150. So we did budget $500,000 for that management fee. The other $50,000 is an annual marketing amount we budget for them, so it's a reimbursement for their marketing expenditures. And then we have budgeted $350,000 for the Art Museum of South Texas. The aquarium is $300,000. And some discussions a few minutes ago about the Texas Amateur Athletic Federation, $250,000 for that, and then $100,000 for that North Beach historical sign. That project has been going on for several years. So,
Right, but I'm sorry, what is that, the 100 for? Because they already have remind me, I know we've talked about it because we.
Yeah, they initially had probably about 125 many years ago, and most of that, I think with the exception of about 20,000 was spent on pouring concrete on the property that we own over there on North Beach, right by the Lexington, kind of in between that hotel and then the city fabricated signs. We're confirming that they're all weather signs, and we're working with the neighborhood association to see do they belong there or along the walking trail along the beach. So in either case, $20,000 was not enough. We didn't think to finish the project. We need to still do something with the paved parking, paved block that we own, a lot, and we still need to install the signs. So we budgeted $100,000 here to complete the installation of the signs, and then do something with the investment that the city made on that piece of property we own.
I mean, at that time, they were calling it Plaza.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about, the square, the cement?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
But we're looking like, we have a consultant right now that did pre-design for the North Beach bathroom that we had in the bond program. So that same consultant's looking at that plaza. We've asked them the question, what can we do with this?
Right.
Is it really an ideal place to have somebody sit? It's so hot with the sun. There's no shade.
Well, yeah, you would need shade.
Should we turn it into a parking lot and put the signs along the walking trail that Kerry Myers helped, execute that? Yeah.
That would be.
I'm talking with Councilman Lerma. That's a good idea. Maybe just to place them along the walking trail. So right now that design consultant this is their living, that's what they do. So that we asked them for their opinion and recommendation on the plaza. Could we do something there in the plaza? Is it maybe better for a parking lot? Should we? And then the signs that we have, we're confirming if they're all weather. Will they last in the sun and the heat and in the weather there right by the bay? And Councilman Lerma and Kerry Myers, we're working with them to see maybe we put them along the walking trail. There's a nice concrete walking trail that follows the beach line, and a lot of residents use that in the morning for exercise. Tourists use it just to walk. So it may be a nice feature to put them along that walking trail.
Right.
At least they're not burning up, standing still trying to read something
But that's
at that
what-
hut
okay.
plaza. Yep. So
That's
the
what's-
100,000 will help us finish.
But it's not necessarily going to be 100,000. You're just
It
giving
may be
it
less.
100?
We just kind of guesstimated on what we needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that brings me, Botanical Gardens. How long have they gotten that amount?
Yeah, probably as long as Eddie can remember, right?
About 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
I think a few years ago
Yeah.
they were getting 20, then it was increased to 40.
We're going to recommend on the next slide, you'll see it, Mayor. Yeah, they put a request in
Yes,
recently
I know.
to have additional funding in between 20 to 40,000. So we're recommending more. I think
Okay.
we said 25, Eddie, is that what we had said?
Correct.
Yeah, we're recommending an additional 25 on top of the 40
Right.
for a total of 65,000 for
Oh, I
the
see. Okay,
Botanical
I'm sorry, I
Gardens.
spoke too
Yeah.
soon. They
That's
make
okay.
a very
Yeah.
big contribution to our community,
Yeah.
and the Botanical Gardens brings in, I would
Yeah.
love, I'm going to ask them to come and give us a little update, because it's very
Okay.
impressive,
Yeah.
the economic impact that comes from them.
Yeah, we agree, and Brett agrees as well. Brett helps to market them and work
Right.
with them. Yeah.
Sure does. Thank you.
Okay, Brett mentioned, but I didn't highlight here, but we do also have for the convention events to incentivize conventions of $325,000, and then we also this year added for non-convention event for other events, we added $250,000 to incentivize some of those programs to come to our community. And here's just a slide that we mentioned a couple days ago. We did receive a request, so you'll see at the first reading, we'll add $25,000 for the botanical gardens if the council desires.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll pause here if there's any questions on the hotel occupancy tax area.
Councilman Barrera.
Thank you, Mayor. Just, Peter, I mean, I don't know, I know we spent some funds on the repairs of the seawall and then had it power washed, but I think we need to do that on a regular basis. So I don't know if that's something that we incorporate into the Parks Department or the DMD budget or whatever the case, or whether it come from the hot tax. I think, a lot of the items that it looks that we're funding is something that are along that corridor, Gulf Beach, Museum of Science and History, Art Museum, Tech State Aquarium, North Beach Historical Science. So just something to consider. The other thing is that I know we talked about signage, but I think it would be, we've never really having gateway signs that are at the T-heads.
Yeah.
Because we just talked about recently, or earlier, that we don't have, we should have more restaurants out there, and because of a policy change, that. So I think that's a thing that if you're staying at the Omni or the Holiday Inn, you have to ask the concierge, hey, where do I go? What do I do?
Right. Yeah, Councilman, there's money in the budget. We added, I think it's 8,000 in the Marina Fund for gateway signage. Yes, sir. And then Type A is a good revenue source for the power washing of the seawall. Next Tuesday, I'll provide the council an update on this, on Cole Park Pier, the seawall, Ayers, and Airline Road. So several capital projects. The seawall, they're making good progress. We'll see what footage farther along. So pressure washing is part of that project, as you said. And we know that we need to continually do that. So that Type A will be a good source of revenue for that. Yep.
Thank you.
Councilman Pesley.
Thank you, Mayor. Eddie, I want to go back to page 39 and have you explain to me a little more about this agreement we have with Airbnb and how that works exactly.
I'm going to have to call a lifeline on
Yeah,
exactly
Miles.
that.
Miles is the one that executed it. Yeah, Miles can help. He's the one that helped craft it.
What's the question?
The Airbnb arrangement that we have to get the payment for.
Yeah, what's the question?
Just what is it?
Yeah,
Explain
what?
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you why I'm asking about that. One of the problems we have here now is the fact that STRs are in full operation in our city, even though we have an ordinance against them, which means we are losing hotel motel tax because of that. So to me, it's almost like tax evasion. And a lot of these homes that are being rented out that way are going through this organization. So if we're going to have a contractual agreement with an organization to collect and do other things for us, we should have in that contractual agreement something that says you will not do this.
That I would
I
like
love
to
it
say,
when I stump an attorney.
Okay. Yeah, and it's important to remember in many of the cases with a residence in Corpus Christi operating that short-term rentals is illegal, and it is a crime. However, the fact that they are committing a crime by operating that short-term rental is not an exception to the obligation to pay tax. We want the tax. regardless of the fact that they're committing a crime. There are many people who see that as a contradiction. We don't. The federal government wants the collect the tax on people who are, say, selling illegal drugs, and it will pursue that tax income regardless of whether the fact that those sales were illegal. Likewise, we seek to collect tax on the illegal conduct that is occurring in these short-term rentals. The HomeAway and Airbnb agreements are what we were able to achieve. They have agreements with the state already to provide the state hotel occupancy tax, and they proposed agreements to us. And these are the only agreements that they're offering. I mean, we asked for, hey, can you provide us the data behind them, and they're not going to provide that. But what they do provide is the agreements with anonymized transactions. So we don't have that information available from Airbnb and HomeAway. We won't, even if we don't have the agreements. So the information you're requesting will not be coming to us if we don't have agreements, but with the agreements, we're able to get the income.
Okay. So does that mean that you're able to collect the taxes on the illegal operation?
Right.
Yes. And we intend to, our goal is to keep collecting, because the illegality of the operation is not an exemption to taxes.
Well, I understand that, but the fact that we're making an agreement to collect the taxes is on an illegal operation is almost like we're subsidizing the illegal operation.
It would be subsidizing the illegal operation to not be collecting the taxes on it.
That's a fine line.
Yeah, Councilman, not to interrupt, but so we have a team in place that this fall, late fall, we'll be bringing policy to City Council to fix this once and for all. We're a little behind most Texas cities and many cities in this country that have already addressed this and have a robust policy guide on. So we have a team, and we're actually hiring a consultant as well to help us to augment the staff. And that'll be a big policy item for the council to consider this fall. It'll take us a little bit of time to get the recommendation for our coastal community.
Okay.
But right now we're operating with some real dated, very limited policy direction. And it's got to this point where we know we have to do something about it. So that's coming forward. So in the interim, we are collecting $1 million or so from the...
And we are continuing to prosecute short-term rentals regardless of whether that they are paying the tax on HomeAway and Airbnb. When we receive information that indicates that the elements of that crime can be proven, we prosecute.
So when we collect the tax from them, we tell them we appreciate the money, but now you need to stop doing this.
When we have information that indicates that, yes, we do. When we have information that indicates that a short-term rental is being operated at a particular location, absolutely. We are prosecuting those cases when they come to us.
Okay.
But keep in mind, we have to be able to prove that.
Miles, the reason I bring this up is I've got constituents who are sending me pictures of the trash and the cars parked in the yard and all that this particular home happens to be located on Ocean Drive. They rent this thing out every weekend, and so what do we tell them? Because our code enforcement has cited them numerous times, but because of the 4,500 case backlog in our municipal court system, nothing is happening to them. So, I mean, it doesn't do us any good in the future to develop a policy in support of or against anything if we can't get our laws enforced.
Your concerns absolutely are completely valid with the backlog that was partly caused by the COVID shutdown of the courts, and the courts are still crippled and not operating fully, and we're getting them back into operation, but we're doing what we can.
Okay.
When we get cases on our end that are provable, we accept the cases and we prosecute.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Councilman Hernandez.
Yeah, on the hot tax, there was a few items in here I wanted to ask questions about. And I think I've heard this before, but I couldn't remember it. Non-CEF incentives of $250,000. I couldn't find it in the line item budget for that dollar amount. I was wondering what that is.
Right. That's a new, so we have a, this is a, Brett, are you still there?
Brett's there.
Yeah. Brett, can you help us explain the non-CSEF? We just added it for the first time this year. So the CEF fund helps to incentivize conventions to come here. The non-CEF, what is?
The non-CEF would be a similar process only for any events that do not take place in the American Bank Center.
Okay.
The CEF is restricted to only the arena and the convention center, so conventions. A new yachting event, a baseball tournament, swimming meet, we would not be able to provide any incentives. There's not a pool of incentive funds for those. So this would be able to allow us to broaden that scope to bring
Okay,
events.
so
to
you don't
other
have
parts of the
anything
city.
programmed for that amount right now. It's just sitting there as a
No,
placeholder.
and it would not necessarily be used every year, similar to the CEF. We have put in.
Okay, well, that answers my question,
Yeah,
because
so
I
there-
didn't see it
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
in the expenditure column for.
It would only be used if we found an event that fit the economic impact profile
Right.
to pay those funds out.
That's new. That was a new ad in this budget based on Brett's recommendation.
Okay, you also have one here for economic development that is new.
Right.
In the amount of $225,000, and in your line item budget is under a professional services account. So what exactly is this for?
That's an account in the event there's an economic development initiative that the hut tax could fund to include. We had looked at development of a visitor strategy. So we'll work with Brett to see if we use his funds, but having a destination strategy, not a visitor, but a destination strategy or plan, we don't really have one. We know tourists come here and they come here, but what is our strategy over a long term? That was one concept that those funds could be used for, but we're checking with CVB to see if their budget can help pay for that instead of that line item, so we reserved it just in case.
A tourism master plan is what that would be for.
Tourism master plan.
Tourism master plan. A 10-year master plan for the whole city.
Meaning what exactly? What would you plan? What kind of master
That
plan?
depends on what the committee, the city council, the mayor would be involved, Peter would be involved. You bring in it just like a master plan of anything. You come in and you look at what do we think the key to tourism, to improving tourism in the next 10 years would be, and then you develop a 10-year plan. There's oftentimes development projects, so it could be a convention hotel, a sports facility. It could be to make it easier for people to develop out on the island or North Beach. It could, a myriad of things. It really depends.
Wait, well, hold on a second. Is this for an assessment, or is this for?
This
are
is
you
a-
using existing information to create the plan, and you need somebody to create the plan?
It's both. This is a best practice all over the country in the industry. Same thing with the economic development, long-term master plan that the EDC might be doing. Tourism organizations do this in partnership with cities as well.
So is so just based on how you have this set up in your budget?
This is not my budget, Councilman.
Well, it's our budget.
Yeah.
Okay, it's our budget.
Yeah, it's not.
The way we have this set up, and it's set up as a professional services, so we're going to hire a consultant to create a to do an assessment and create a master plan for us for tourism. Brett
is recommending that. How we pay for it is to be determined. So we could use this, but we're working with Brett to see, does the CVB budget have the funds to do it, so we can use this for something else or not use it at all and use it next year for something else.
Okay. It's a little vague.
It is, yeah, we agree.
And when you put economic development, my ears go up because there's no specific to it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll just have to wait to see what you bring to us, because it's
whatever we do bring would need council approval, so it's the
Right.
money will only be used if the council approves it.
Okay.
Yeah, we commit to that.
Okay, great.
Right.
I think that's all of our questions.
Okay, good.
Thank
Eddie?
you, Brett. Thank you, Eddie.
Okay, well, Eddie has now
Oh.
just one final thing. Yeah, the final thing
Wrap
is,
it up.
and it shouldn't take us more than the
Kidding.
15 minutes on the clock here, but he's just going to go over the first initial conversation on wrap-up for the budget.
Okay.
Okay, so that begins on slide 46.
Okay. This is a listing of the workshops we've had. As we mentioned, we scheduled 4 workshops. We've ended up having 6, so a couple carried over into the morning of the council meetings. Then we had 5 community input sessions, originally planned to be in person, and we switched it due to the uptick in the Delta variant, so we went virtual with all these meetings, 1 in each council district. We had about 825 viewers on Facebook Live and YouTube for these 5 events. Just a few of the comments made at the virtual meetings. The first one was on Monday, August the 9th, is District 1. We had some comments on street and sidewalk improvements. We had some comments on additional splash pads in city parks, and what plans did we have to get the water towers in place, and what areas was the litter crew going to patrol. In District 2, again, we had comments on street improvement plans in the Arcadia subdivision, what streets were going to receive illuminated street signs, and then were there any plans to add trees to the downtown area. And then we also had a comment on were there any more plans to eliminate more of the one-way roads we have in town. In District 3, a common theme is streets, residential streets. Then residents wanted to know what streets were scheduled for repair, and the question was asked, would shade structures eventually be added to all of our parks? And then would the water rates increase to pay for the desalination project was the question. Then on District 4, again, street repairs and crosswalks are needed, drainage improvements needed. Question about what is being done about our litter problem. And then were there any budget, does the budget include any improvements to our wastewater treatment plants? Then also, were there any plans for improvements to Ocean Drive parks, including sidewalks, parking lots, and park amenities? In District 5, multiple comments about street improvements to Timbergate, Beard, and Yorktown. Citizen wanted to know if an impervious cover map would be available to citizens. Also a question about new playground equipment for the Wells and Brackenridge parks. Then a comment about the need for more spay and neuters for our animals, pets. Summary, 825 viewers, 105 questions were asked and answered during these input sessions, and then the comments were focused on streets, parks and recreation, water utilities, stormwater, and solid waste. As a result of these community input sessions, the city manager recommends that we do add $812,219 in additional funding for residential streets. This would be funded by additional property tax revenue that was projected with completion of the final truth in taxation worksheet. If approved, this would increase the residential street funding from $18.45 million to over $19 million. And then it would increase the overall street funding from $121.5 million to $122.3 million. Back in May, Human Resources came to council and added the pay plans and holiday schedules to the budget ordinance. So this is just an update on what you'll be seeing Tuesday in the first reading. On the holiday proposals, we will be recommending in the budget an additional floating cultural holiday and on Juneteenth as a paid holiday. And then just a little information, I won't read the data to you there, but Congress passed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act in just a couple of months ago. And then we're also recommending that the non-essential city offices close between Christmas and New Year's. This is a slow period, and many employees already take time off during this period. And there's just a calendar at the bottom, and with that week highlighted there. And Just a reminder that December the 24th and December the 31st are already city holidays. And here's some data on the 7 cities we compare ourselves to in Texas. The 7 larger cities than us, with their holiday count. San Antonio has 16, Houston 10, Austin 12, and so on down the line. So we're behind the other cities that we compare ourselves to for holiday benefits. So the average of the other cities is 11. So we're recommending that we increase ours from 8 to 10. In addition to the city manager recommended amendments, we do have a few staff amendments that you'll be seeing at the first reading. First, in the general fund, a lot of these are just moving something from one department to another. It doesn't change the overall fund expenditure. So, code enforcement was administered by the police department, so we had a facilities charge that was in code enforcement, a large facility charge. Part of that should be in police. So there were $700,000 in the facility charge for code. We were going to move 640 of that out and put it charge it to police. With the facility charge is a per square foot charge to pay for the facility fund, which is an internal service. In the second item, we had $150,000 budgeted for Northwest Boulevard improvements. We had that in the planning where we put most of master plan work, but this is more of infrastructure work, so we just want to move that from planning to streets. And then we were recommending that we move a strategic communication specialist. It was previously in the health department. It's been vacant for quite a while. It was upgraded to handle some crisis management. So most of our PIO personnel are under the communications department, so we recommend that we move this. We've communicated with both departments. They are on board with this move. The position would still be doing a large amount of work for the health department, but would also be doing some social media work and other crisis management that the communications department needs. And then lastly, in the general fund, we recommend that we increase the sister city program funding from $10,000 to $20,000. In the enterprise funds, in the water fund is where the utility business office is. The utility business office takes care of all the billing for all the utilities. So it's housed in the water fund. The wastewater, stormwater, and gas pay for their part of this particular service. We increased the utility business office costs. We increased the amounts in the water, stormwater, and gas, but we neglected to increase the receiving end, which is the water fund. So we're just increasing. We increased the water, wastewater, and gas in a total of $824,000. We just need to include that $824,000 as a reimbursement in the water fund. So the utility business office costs us about $5.2 million, and about $3 million of that is reimbursed from the other utilities. So their net is a little over $2 million. In the debt service fund, when the final property tax worksheet was completed, we also needed to increase. We're going to need to increase the revenue in the GO debt service fund by about $945,000. It's just increasing revenues. No expenditures would change. And then we had 4 areas in the capital improvement program that were changed. One of them, the first one in the water capital improvement program, it has to do with saltwater desalinization. So we're decreasing this amount by $15,840,000 to $10,163,000. I think the number that probably is stuck in a lot of minds is the $11,475,000. So the difference between $11,475,000 and the $10,163,000 is in the current fiscal year 21. So we're recommending that change. And in the wastewater CIP, we're proposing to increase the project budget for the Oath water reclamation plant process upgrade and breakwater chlorinization facility decommission, increase that by $2,500,000. In the stormwater water CIP, we decrease the project budget for citywide stormwater infrastructure rehabilitation of $5 million $550,000. What happened in this case is we received some CARES Act money of over $5 million, and we intended to we didn't intend for that to be on top of what so we decreased the revenue bond, decreased our debt load in this area. So it was just some miscommunication there when we received the CARES Act funding. So we intended to decrease the city debt load. And lastly, we added the development service building remodel project for $4,584,000 that has been discussed. There's a couple of items that aren't on here that you'll see Tuesday, one of them being the item we just mentioned with the Botanical Gardens, increasing their budget from 20 to 40, or from 40 to 65,000, increase of 25,000. And also the development services revenue, we'll need to work with development services today, because they originally proposed a 20% increase, now it's around a 10%. So we'll work with them, and you'll be seeing that item as a decrease for development services revenue. I think you received, did you pass out the?
Yes. Okay,
These
we
are
have,
just the CIP pages that were changed.
we have a couple
Okay.
questions. Councilman Molina?
Thank you, Mayor. Eddie, going back to your slide number 54, city manager recommended addition. I guess, Peter, this might be a question for you. That first bullet point, you have $812,219 in additional funding for residential streets. How do we come up with that figure, and why aren't we doing more?
Yeah, so that figure is the exact amount difference between our initial listed amount of property tax revenue that we thought we were going to get when we were using kind of estimates, so we didn't have the final worksheets.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference between the property tax number that's in the budget book compared to the final one that was done about almost 2 weeks later, that's the exact difference.
Okay.
So that means, so we're going to collect 812,000 more, or we're projected to receive 812,000 more in property tax revenue based on our partners finalizing those worksheets from the state. And so that's the difference in that property tax revenue. So we're recommending it all go to streets.
Okay, how much was coming in total?
In the property tax?
Yes.
Let me take a look here. Do you have that number ready?
The total property tax in the general fund was about 92.6 million.
That's what I had thought, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah, so that's, yeah, so it'd be 92.6 plus the 8, so it'd be 93.4.
well, that 92.6 included,
Oh,
already included.
Okay,
Okay. All right, well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
okay.
Councilman Hernandez?
In looking at some of these amendments, one of the things that came up was obviously on seawater desal and changing it from the 15.8 million down to 10.1 million. Appreciate that. We still have the question on the out years of 2023 and 2024. I know it's a difference in opinion as to planning on how that works. Obviously, I know I've stated my position that I wouldn't vote for anything going forward until I was able to see alternatives. And I don't know if we're planning to show any alternatives. But I don't want to create a work stream for planning purposes if it hasn't been approved. Is it still necessary to have those funding levels in the out years of 2023 and 2024?
That's really, the answer would be from the full council. So we heard you, Councilman, and that same day when we had the CIP, we heard other council members that said, well, it probably makes sense to leave it in because we are working on the effort, and it's transparency, or it shows it's more full disclosure. So it's really up to the council. We recommend that it all be listed, the right number for 2022, which is at 10 million, and then keeping those out years as planning amounts, just showing that council is engaged in this extremely important policy question.
So, and I compared this to the North Beach project, where we have certain numbers that are there, but we're not necessarily planning anything. So it seems,
Yeah.
it seems like we're treating these things differently. And, are we not planning anything? Is it, do we not put placeholders? Because we do have amounts for that.
Right. Yeah, they are different projects. So one big difference in the desal compared to North Beach is the city, based on city council's policy direction and application, was approved for a loan by the Texas Water Development Board for that amount, for the 200 plus million. So we have a recognizable revenue source. Whether the council wants to use it or not is still another matter. We don't have that identified funding source except for the 5 million that we put in for North Beach. We have the RFP out right now.
Well, I mean, aren't these, we say it's a loan, but they're really bonds, right?
It's really,
They buy the way they loan us money is they buy bonds from us, correct?
they help to buy down the interest. They sell bonds at a lower rate than what we could.
No, we sell them the bonds at a lower rate. That's how I understand we do it, right?
I don't know if that's, Constance, I don't know if that's on the Texas Water Development Board loan, yeah. They ultimately issue bonds at a lower rate than what we could. They help to subsidize the.
But I mean, it's our bonds, right, that they buy?
Well, initially, they go out and get bonds.
Well, they do their own bonds, right?
Correct.
But then the way they loan us money is they buy our bonds.
Correct. That's right.
And they
at a lower
interest rate.
Interest rate, correct.
Okay, so but it's still them buying our bonds, correct?
Yes, they're like the investors buying our bonds.
Okay, so we're basically issuing bonds.
Right.
Yes, right.
Right. So that
They're utility revenue bonds, correct.
I would say very similarly, that's how you would pay for a lot of the North Beach stuff. I mean, it's separated into different things. You could use hot tax for the berm that was recommended by LAN. You could use general obligation funds for any street improvements, but for the actual drainage portion, it would be a utility revenue bond, right?
The council hasn't decided that, so
the same thing. Used. I mean, like I said, they're very similar. And
the big difference
the nuances
council,
that you're using. And
no,
Peter, let me finish.
Okay, go.
Let me finish.
Okay. Let's ask a question, make a statement, and then allow staff to answer the question.
Well, I hadn't gotten through my statement.
I know, but you made a statement, and Peter was saying
but I
something.
hadn't finished.
I understand that, but I'd like to hear what Peter was saying in rebuttal, or not rebuttal, but in response.
Can I finish my statement?
Okay, finish your statement. Let's make it clear.
All right. So what I was saying is that it's very similar in the nature of these two type projects. They're both utility projects. They both are bond that you sell utility bonds. One you sell them to the Water Development Board. The other one you sell in the open market. It's very similar. I think you're talking nuances, but I'm in just looking at the two projects. I can't. Well, I'll let you answer.
Yeah. So in my estimation, there's a big difference, which is council has approved the bonds of the loan application, and we have been awarded in a competitive way 8 out of 90 some odd applications funding. Whether or not we want to take it, like I said, is another matter. But so council's they've looked at options on funding, and they've decided with a vote, let's go in that direction for the desal plant if you do one. On the North Beach, there still has to be policy discussion on how can you fund it. Utility revenues, stormwater utility revenues is one, GO bonds, other monies from the city's general fund or other resources, right? And that conversation hasn't been, we don't have direction from the council on that. That's why we're supportive of it. We did put the $5 million in that we recommended and that the council approved from the CARES money, the federal money recently. And as I mentioned, we have that RFP out, and that'll help the council in October to see is there a private investor that wants to help fund the navigable canal option. And so there's still some work to be done.
What it's telling me, Peter, is that we're not planning anything.
No, we're planning a lot.
We're planning $5 million for next year, but we're not planning anything else.
No, that's not right. Right now, we have an RFP out to continue the policy conversation with the council, which the question was, is there a private investor that wants to help fund the navigable canal? And we'll get that answer in October.
Okay,
so we're planning. We've been planning and constantly moving this project forward.
Okay, Peter, so I guess the point there is we'll agree to disagree on that one. I'm sure when we come up Tuesday, I'll have some amendments for the budget and make those proposals at that time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Councilman
you.
Smith.
Thank you. You brought up the fact, a couple of holidays. So will we be reducing the working days for our city employees? In other words, if they're working 175 days or paid for 175 days, we're going down to 173?
That's correct.
Okay.
They would be using their personal leave, with the exception of one day, to cover that difference.
Well, my understanding in the briefing, it was two. We'd have the floater holiday and then the Juneteenth.
Right, but the Juneteenth would be used on that holiday, not during the Christmas, New Year break.
but that would be a specific. Or where I'm going, we added to our staff, we increased staff in this budget, which I fully support. And as I'm looking through this, if we drop the number of working days for a city employee by 2 on there, that works out to about 40 people with it. If you just work the simple math on there. And I think we as a city, we haven't hit the service levels that we need on there. So we're increasing our cost on there. And you take the police department, if every policeman works 2 less days, it's going to take 5 policemen to replace that. So we didn't get that far ahead. We're increased in this other area. I took 2 calls yesterday for service issues with the city. I know we all take these calls. And I'm just concerned about, we haven't hit where I think we ought to be on there, and to have our citizens and our ratepayers, okay, there'll be 2 days that they can't get a phone answered, or 2 days that the parks aren't mowed, or 2 days that the streets aren't done with it on there. Are we ready at this point in time? But monetarily, I'd much rather if. It's more than overtime. When we're losing 2 real days, and it's probably about $1.5 million a day on there with it, that we increase benefits or salaries by it. Rather, we've got so much to do in this city. We're hiring more, but then on the flip side, we're just giving it back through time off. So we have no more hours than we had before adding these new staff. Again, fully supporting. With it, so whether it's, like I say, plan review, fixing streets, or anything else, I'm not a fan of 2 extra days. Of course, you told us, well, we don't compare that well to cities across the nation, but how are we in our overall days off? It's not just holidays, but it's vacation days, sick days, personal days, all these other days with it. So,
yeah, Councilman, I'll have HR speak to that second question, but. This closure only applies to non-essential, so police officers, firefighters, garbage workers, emergency pothole repair persons, they're working. They don't have the time off. So this is like this is professionals that have a task order. So they work on a project-based approach. So they still have to get the project done.
And I realize that, but there's 2 less days, and we take our police department. Of course, they're going to be working and with it, but overall, every officer will be working 16 less days or 16 less hours a year on there.
No, the police officers won't be.
Right.
No, they won't be.
It's not them.
They're going to have to work on.
Then we have the budget impact.
They'll have to work on Juneteenth, and they're going to have to work on.
I know, but I guess we're not communicating right. That.
Yeah.
So our 400 and something officers on there, they have 2 days more off. Of course, they'll be working in these times.
Right.
But you just take that hour gap, that 2 days off that 400 and something officers get. We need 5 more officers overall to replace that through the year with it. And, we'll do our essential services.
Yeah.
But we just, we're losing 40 FTE equivalents when you say 16 hours by 3,500 employees. It's simple math on there with it. So,
yeah, well, and Councilman, I get your point, but I think, the flip side to this is the time frame that we're talking about is the time frame that a lot of people take off. It is the week of Christmas. And as a mother and a wife and I say wife because I've got duties as a wife, as a mother, and now as mayor. It is a huge plus to be able to be off on that week. As a house, for children, they're off that week. That's the other thing. We have our school districts that are all off that week. You have children at home. That's the week that is probably, and I hate to say the word unproductive, but it's Christmas. Everybody's in that mode. And if you take, I bet there's quite a bit of people who take time off during that week. I just think it's a balance. The biggest thing for me is that you're saying this is a best practice. It becomes a best practice, my guess is because people take off that week.
Yeah, you're exactly right,
to be with their
Mayor.
families.
Right.
And there's that part of just taking care of our employees to say, hey, you know what, let's the way you guys have coordinated this effort of being off that week is, to me, it's a good balance of when to do it and how to do it. And as a mom, outside of all of this, a working mother, I couldn't ask for better to be off that week because I've got kids and I've got a husband and I have parents. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, but let's do the math. You need to hire 40 additional FTEs to make up for these time off if we're going to do the service levels we want to do. I'm looking at strictly as an analytical point on there.
Yeah, Councilman, so for the professionals like the budget analyst or the program manager, they're salaried employees, and the way we work them is they have a task and a project and they have to get it done by this time. And so if they have to work 9 hours, 10 hours, that's what they have to do. So we're not telling them, you know what, the project was due in December, but now it's going to be due in January. No, it's still due in December.
Right.
You figure out how you have to get it done, or you got to come to work. You even have to come to work during that week that we're closed.
Or you stay late, you do, I mean.
Exactly.
I
That's
know how
it
the
works.
fifth floor does, and I agree with you completely on that.
Yeah, that's how it works.
There's,
I've called people into City Hall at 7, 8, 9 at night on
Right.
the weekend, and they come in. They have to.
The work ethic.
Part of the job.
Exactly.
That's
If you don't
part
want
of
to,
the
you go
culture
work somewhere else.
You're creating, but we got 3,500, and how many fall into that cohort versus
Right.
the rest? But I think it's probably the will of the council. I'm voicing my opinion. I'm looking at this as an analyst on there, and just service levels, those kind of things with it. So again,
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Pusley.
Eddie, just real quick, some of these obviously going to change the numbers for our budget book. Are you going to issue us new cut sheets on the budget book for the ones that have changed?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We'll issue those, and then, of course, the adopted book, but that'll be a little bit further down the line when it comes out, but we'll give you some new pages.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Lerma.
Thank you, Mayor. Peter, since I'm new on the budget,
What's that?
I'm a little confused
Okay.
on what Gil Hernandez was talking to you about
Okay.
earlier about
Yes, sir.
that 10,100,000. So
Right.
you're saying the council voted on this already
Yes.
to put this in the budget? This is prior to me, I guess. I'm assuming.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
what I want to understand.
No, they did, yeah,
'Cause
so.
I don't remember voting on that. That's what
You
I'm
didn't,
asking.
no, it was a vote back in 2021, I think late 2021. I forget the exact date, but.
Late 2020 or?
2020, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
late
'cause I was here on
2020.
21. That's what I'm saying. Did I miss this? I don't remember
No,
missing a
sorry,
meeting.
yeah, late 2021, Councilman, yeah. There were several votes. One vote was, do we apply for the loan? And then the second vote was, do we accept the first tranche of the money, which was at $11.7 million.
And that's that 10 million that you're talking
Yeah,
about?
right, yeah, so the 10.1 versus the 15, yeah, the 10 million is what's left of that first tranche, because they've already spent some on.
Oh, some of it?
Yeah, they've been spending some on environmental.
So all you're doing
permits.
is just re-putting that same amount in there to continue whatever they voted on at that
Yeah.
point.
Well, the issue is the staff had put $15 million in.
Yeah, I saw that.
And you heard a lot of citizens say 15 million, that's not even a
Yeah.
number that recognizable. So the number that is recognizable is the 11 million.
Okay.
However, some has already been spent. So what will be spent beginning October 1 going forward will be that 10 million.
So you're just putting in the difference
Yes,
that
sir.
hasn't been spent.
Exactly.
Okay, because I just wanted to understand that because,
That's
when you and I spoke about the 5 million for North Beach, and I
Yes,
said,
sir.
well, If they're getting 10 million, why am I getting an extra million a year for North Beach to continue that project?
Right.
But you're right, we haven't voted on which direction we're going to go on that.
Exactly.
I just wanted to make sure I understood that properly.
Okay, that's
You know,
good.
until we vote on it or until the RFI comes in.
Right.
You know, to where we can give direction
Right.
on how the council wants to vote and accept whatever they're, you know, then we'll look at that part of the process for North Beach going from that time forth.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep, you
I
got our
just wanted
word
to
on.
understand.
No, that's perfectly good.
Okay.
Yes, sir. That's why we're here.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think, okay, that's all of our questions. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Hurley. Thank you. Okay, Peter, anything else?
Well, there was, I don't know if Councilman Pusley stepped out, but we did
No,
have.
he had to leave.
We did, okay. Then we'll cover on Tuesday the dog park costing.
Oh, yeah, I
We had
was
a
going to
couple-
thank you for that. That
We had a
was-
couple of slides we
who
can go over
created-
Tuesday.
Dr. Gonzalez,
Yeah.
very good.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you very
We'll go over
much.
that on Tuesday then. That
Can't wait.
concludes our briefing today,
Okay.
man.
You just need to cover.
Everybody
with
have a wonderful day.
Councilman Pusley, because the rest of us are for dogs, okay?
We're all for dogs. We save the dogs and then dog park them. Okay, with no further business, I adjourn this meeting.
We're here at Lindell Park celebrating the Swatner Drive project kickoff.
Engineering Services, city staff, and council members celebrated the beginning of the Bond 2018 Swatner Drive project at Lindell Park. Councilmember Ben Molina explained why getting this street project started is important.
This is something that is very important to the city of Corpus Christi, especially the Lindell neighborhood. They have been waiting for this for a really long time. This street is in dire need, and it is one of the most busiest traveled streets in Lindell neighborhood. So the neighbors have really been looking forward to this project. I've been looking forward to this project. And
From Indiana Avenue to Texan Trail will receive a full reconstruction with new pavement, curb and gutters, sidewalks, ADA compliant ramps, driveways, signage, pavement markings, and lighting improvements. Chamberlain Street and Glazebrook Street from Swatner Drive to Reed Drive will also get new stormwater utility improvements. Engineering Services says this project will complement the future Staples Street project.
And it will be a great project in conjunction